Welcome in here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serterman. It is Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us here. We have a lot to get to today. But first, we want to, as we've been starting, it seems like forever, the show is starting with weather.
Gotta talk about it.
Gotta talk about it. Still snow. Snow is going to be on the ground
For a while.
For a while. It's still cold outside. It is warming up.
Mm-hmm.
I almost slipped leaving the building last night.
Yeah.
And I almost slipped coming into the building this morning. And I definitely almost slipped walking into my complex last night. So I say all that to say, be careful.
Yes.
That
I
stuff.
slipped in the parking lot yesterday.
Oh, did you like slip and fall?
I fell.
You fell?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Full on fall.
I did one of the
I'm
whoa.
okay. Everything, whatever.
I did the
But
whoa.
You just
Whoa.
Yeah.
You know, when you just kind of, you grab air, try to
grab at nothing.
You just try to grab at nothing. That's what I did. So hopefully you guys are making out better than Carlene and I.
Right.
There is a chance of rain this week. So what could that mean with these cold temperatures? Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich.
Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. We've got some rain on the way, but there's a lot of hubbub about maybe some snowflakes mixing in. I'll set the record straight. We'll tell you why this isn't going to be an impact at all, and even though we see some flakes, I'll show you where that's more likely, but more importantly, why it's important that we get some rain and above average temperatures, maybe even above freezing for about 2 days in a row. This could be crazy. So here's our setup. You can see we've got a system back to the west. There it is coming in from the west, and it is all rain. There's a warm front coming in. So temperatures today are actually going to warm up into the 40s, even with cloud cover with southwest winds. I'm looking at the current temperatures. We're hovering right above the freezing mark south, below north. Once we get above freezing today, in our area, we're going to stay there for 48 hours. So we got 48 hours of above freezing temperatures to melt everything. And that rain back to the southwest is going to be heading our way. So let's break this down. All right, so we're going to look at Futurecast short range rapid refresh. The good news today is, as I mentioned, we're actually going to get some much needed rainfall, which is going to be great for our area. This means the potential for seeing at least some rain to melt some of the snow and ice. So we'll go through today. It'd really be tonight that we start to see the moisture. So this is overnight tonight. Temperatures, I mean, it's going to be above freezing. It won't exactly be warm. You're probably talking mid to upper 30s. But you can see going into tonight and early Wednesday. So this is Wednesday morning. You see the rain. Again, heavier south and east, more so than back to the west. We go through Wednesday. This is all rain. Temperatures in the 40s. Again, not super warm, but enough that it's not frozen. As we go into Wednesday night into Thursday morning, you'll see on the backside, a wave of low pressure is going to try to form on this front here. And on the backside, you've got the good old-fashioned cold air chasing the moisture. This is going to be kind of one of those races between the cold air and the moisture moving out. And you'll see that there is some snow on the backside of this. It may be a brief mix, rain, snow. Not going to amount to much. You'll see this is probably the worst case for our area. Maybe a flurry north, some rain. But it's really over here that I see the primary chance, because the low pressure will kind of get more mature and actually supply more moisture. So if we're going to see some accumulating snows out of this system, it's going to be to our east or northeast, not so much in the Charlotte area. Doesn't mean we couldn't see a few wet snowflakes, but again, the impacts will be close to zero because temperatures are going to be basically in the low 30s, above freezing. The ground's going to be wet. We're not looking at Arctic air like we have with our last system, or we've had the last couple of nights. So you can see that's like the worst right there. So 99% of this is rain, and it moves off to the east. Another way to look at this is looking at the Schref plumes. I love looking at this. So this is this morning. You can see the blue line is above freezing. We're above freezing all the way until Thursday morning right there. So that's a good sign. A lot of melting going on. What type of precipitation are we going to see? You can see the green is the rain chance is staying pretty high. At the very end on Thursday morning, there's a brief chance, 8% chance of a brief wet snowflake, but that's about it, not amounting to anything. And when you start looking at some of the blend of models, you look at all the data, This is what the data shows for the blend here of all the guidance. You could see to the north, there's maybe a dusting, but right here, north of Raleigh, this area is the area that we possibly see something there. You can see around our area, there's a hint of maybe a few flakes, but again, you're looking at less than measurable in many locations. So just a flurry mixing in with the rain at the end, again, impacts close to zero for you. When we look at the probabilities, this is what the Weather Service puts out for the probabilities of seeing accumulation. You also see the same thing. Notice up here, I'll move the map over so you can see it. Expected snow amounts. You see a couple spots near trace flurries, but it's really over here where we see the impact in this area, north of Raleigh up towards Norfolk. So that's the area I would watch for some snow out of this. Overall, the impacts are relatively low, as I mentioned, because this is actually going to end up being a good thing for us. The rain is going to help melt the snow and ice. So we've got a 48-hour window from right now. Once the temperature gets above freezing at your location today, it will stay above freezing all the way until possibly Thursday morning. If we don't drop below freezing on Thursday morning, it probably won't be again until Friday morning. So there could be 3 days of above freezing temperatures. So we're going to be doing a lot of melting with a little bit of rain mixed in. We'll keep an eye on the flurry chance. Again, just because you see a flurry doesn't mean it really has an impact. It's essentially like rain in this case because of how warm it is. It's not accumulating. It's not freezing on contact. So we're pretty good. We can look at the impact graphics, which I love showing you these. This is the chance of minor impacts, not even major or moderate. Minor impacts will go into Thursday. And I'm going to stop this Thursday morning and I'll zoom in. You can see in Charlotte, the chance of a minor impact, which is just snow falling, is around 5%. But you look over here in eastern North Carolina, this is where we could see some snowfall. Again, that's the point that we're watching. Back towards us, this is going to be a non-event. So good news, melting snow and ice for the next 48 hours minimum, and some rain to help accelerate that process. So clean out the snow away from your downspouts, your gutters. Let this water run off because we want to get as much of it off the road surface as we can over the next 2 days.
And speaking of that cold weather happening right now in New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is addressing cold weather concerns and also the concerns around the death toll, which continues to climb because it is dangerously cold there in New York City. Let's take a listen to that.
Really quick, and then we do have to go.
I really need to have a clarification about this. I know that you talk about the fact that the police can respond in these instances if there's a weapon. But in this case, there wasn't a knowledge that there would be a weapon. There was, the charges were that he was breaking glass. And at the last minute when the cops came in, he pulled a knife out in the kitchen. So how do you determine when the police can arrive if the initial call doesn't say he's got a gun, he's got a knife? What do you do? And then if it turns violent, if a person's there without the ability to stop him, what happens?
So I think there's a few things to say here. One is a lot of this is exactly the focus of the conversations that we're having internally in developing out this Department of Community Safety. Additionally, I want to make clear that a person experiencing a mental health episode does not always have to be served first or exclusively by a police officer. It is important for us to have all of the options available, and that's exactly what we're looking at. Thank you all so much.
Appropriately, Mr. Mayor, having seen the footage?
Mr. Mayor, do you plan on removing Newsmax from your cabs like the borough president has requested?
All right, so that was a press conference with New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani addressing the cold weather concerns and giving an update as New York City's death toll continues to climb because of this extremely dangerous cold weather there. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We want to go now to Washington, D.C., where Senator Warner out of Virginia is holding a press conference on intelligence oversight. Let's take a listen into what he is saying right now.
Concern every American, because it didn't occur in a vacuum. Now, if this administration were genuinely committed to election security, its actions would reflect that. Instead, we have seen the absolute opposite, the systemic weakening of the very institutions designed to protect our elections from real threats. And remarkably, many of these organizations and entities were put in place under the first Trump administration. So what have they done? The administration disbanded the FBI's Foreign Intelligence Task Force, the unit created in 2017 to investigate foreign interference, share intelligence across agencies, and work with the private sector to close cyber vulnerabilities. It has gutted enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, which exists to expose covert foreign influence in our political system. It dismantled the Office of the Director of National Intelligence's own Foreign Malign Influence Center, a center created by law. This is not an option for Tulsi Gabbard to dismiss. This center was created by law to track and document state-sponsored threats to our elections and candidates, and do so with transparency designed to make sure politics stays out of its work. And it has slashed the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA's, election security workforce, cutting more than a third of the agency and ending funding for programs that provided direct cybersecurity support to state and local elections. These are not the actions of an administration that's serious about election security. These are the actions of an administration clearing away safeguards while simultaneously inserting itself into domestic investigations, seizing election materials as they did in Georgia, and publicly calling for Republicans, again, to take over and nationalize voting in multiple states. When you put all of this together, it is clear that what happened in Fulton County is not about revisiting the past. It is about shaping the outcome of future elections. And quite honestly, dismantling the very guardrails that were put in place to keep them free and fair. This is why it cannot be brushed aside with carefully worded letters from Director Gabbard. She owes Congress, and more important, the American people, direct answers. So once again, I'm calling on the Director of National Intelligence to appear in person before the Senate Intelligence Committee to testify under oath about her role in this matter. She needs to explain why she believed it was appropriate to involve herself in a domestic criminal investigation, why she facilitated direct contact between the president and FBI agents on the ground, and what safeguards, if any, were put in place to protect against direct political interference. Now, we all know that Americans deserve free elections, safe from political intimidation. They deserve a justice system that operates independently. And they deserve accountability when those very safeguards are put at risk. As Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I'm going to use every tool I can to make sure that we get those answers. And before I take questions, I remember back a year ago at this time when people would often ask me when they were seeing the actions of the Trump administration, do you think we'll have free and fair elections in 26 or in 28? And my response at that point was, I think you're overreacting. I have deep concerns about the fairness of our elections in 26 and 28 right now. I have concerns about the elections in primaries in our country. I have concerns about the elections that may take place in Virginia in terms of a redistricting referendum. These kind of actions that have taken place over the last year, as we've seen this systemic dismantling of the very protections that were put in place by, again, the first Trump administration. If it doesn't scare the heck out of you, it should. And then, if you go back to the report, the Bipartisan Intelligence Committee investigation report into the 2016 interference, unanimously agreed to by including the Secretary of State and all of the members of the committee. It said one of the strongest protections we had about interference in our election system was the fact of our decentralization, that we have these elections carried out as laid out in the Constitution by states and localities. The idea that now Donald Trump wants to nationalize these elections and have one political party take over that process, this provides a huge danger to our country going forward and the safety and security of these elections. So I'll be happy to take your questions.
Senator, given the president's comments on the podcast and the events in Georgia, have you heard about this effort spreading to other states? Are you concerned? That
I'm deeply concerned about it spreading to other states.
Have you heard?
I have not heard to date. Remember, the indictment, or in this case, the affidavit that was sworn, hasn't been released. In prior administrations, when there was evidence of potential malfeasance, it was released. I think when the Biden administration went after some of the influencers who were being paid by Russian sources, that was all the underlying documents were released. Why has this one not been released? Why was the FBI agent in charge of the Atlanta office moved aside? Why, in a normal course of an investigation like this, the effort would be led by the U.S. attorney from the state, Georgia? Why was this signed by the U.S. attorney from Missouri? I think we're seeing here a president obsessed about the fact that he lost in 2020. He can't get over it. And it appears, and if there is some foreign connection here, the Director of National Intelligence has clearly violated her duty to keep the intelligence committees informed, which she has not. I think this is an effort to try to curry favor back with the president in an area where she's clearly been excluded from most of the recent national events, including Venezuela, Iran, situation with NATO and elsewhere. I have no other logical explanation until and unless she comes forward and testifies. Please.
Thank you, Senator. Just as someone who's much more familiar than most with the ins and outs of the role of Director of National Intelligence, should Tulsi Gabbard have the time to be doing election probes in Georgia? Is that not a very busy job?
Well, let me answer it two ways. First of all, the FBI that's been over a month late on getting out the Epstein files, were they taking people off of getting that information out to put them on this investigation that seems like it's a thinly veiled attempt to kind of appease the president? And no, the Director of National Intelligence under Biden, under Trump 1, under Obama, that's a full-time job plus. Running off on her own, and it's been reported to me that the FBI was not aware she was coming. She's got this much extra time. Well, I don't know what she's doing in the job. And it goes back to, at least until I'm corrected, otherwise, the assumption, since she's not been involved in any of the briefs on Iran, on Venezuela, on the circumstance with Greenland and NATO, or any of the other national security concerns where our intelligence community plays a critical role, most of those have been briefed by the Secretary of State or by John Radcliffe. I'm not sure what she's doing. Please.
Yeah, you said, I think, that you have not received any notification from the DNI about detecting foreign interference in election infrastructure, which is required under the law to report within 14 days. Have you her office says you also received a copy of this whistleblower complaint that we've now heard about. Have you, and do you know if there's a connection between what she did in Georgia and this whistleblower?
Well, let me try to answer that in two ways. One, in terms of, I read the intelligence briefs on a regular basis, and I've got a full staff that follows this. if there had been something percolating about foreign influence in the 26 elections, I sure as hell should have seen it. And I've not seen it. And you're right. If it was there, she had an obligation to report it to us. And I would point out again, during Trump 1, during Biden, there were regular updates from the DNI and the whole law enforcement intelligence apparatus to make sure that we could reassure Americans that the elections were going to be safe. We've had none of that. If anything, we've had the exact opposite, is they've broken down all the institutions put in place. On the second question of the whistleblower, I'm going to see that complaint imminently.
So you haven't received it?
I have not received it. I have not received it, but I think it is literally today or tomorrow. But let's go back and look at this for a second. It took the Gang of 8 6 months of negotiation with the Director of National Intelligence to share that whistleblower complaint. This is in direct contradiction to what Gabbard testified during her confirmation hearings, that she would protect whistleblowers and share the information in a timely manner. It took 6 months of bipartisan pressure to get them to bring it forward. The notion of the Gang of 8 was created so that you could have this kind of communication in a completely secure manner. And I do not, again, I'll take a look at the complaint, but the idea that she held back for 6 months a bipartisan request from the Gang of 8 is one more example of somebody that's in way over her head in this job.
Just want to follow up on the foreign element of this. I mean, is there any sort of evidence from the IC or expectation from the IC that we'll see Russia, China, or Iran try to interfere in the elections this fall? And at this point, I mean, is your concern greater? What's your greater concern? Is it foreign interference or is it domestic?
Well, let me try to. The National Intelligence report, or when we did worldwide threats last year, the document that comes out with that, still included. This was the Trump administration, their last major report on this, still included. We are concerned about, election threats from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and potentially others. And with AI tools, the threats grow more complicated all the time. It makes what happened in 2016 look like child's play. But right now, I'm more concerned about domestic interference. I'm concerned about a president that hasn't read the Constitution. I'm concerned about efforts to intimidate voters, whether it be ICE roving patrols or whether it be these kind of claims that are brought. I'm concerned about the fact that I think in many states I've seen upwards of 50% of the election officials, who are all nonpartisan, have quit or retired, mostly because of some of the threats, online threats and doxing that's taken place. So yeah, I'm very concerned about domestic interference as well as foreign interference. And the ability then for a foreign entity to amplify these divisions or spread lies, that is, that's much easier now. Remember in 2016, Russia had to create fake identities to say crazy stuff and then amplify it. You don't need to create fake identities now. You can simply promote some of the theories that come out of folks in this administration. Please.
A few questions. One, to clarify, what setting will the whistleblower complaint be made available in? Will that be briefed? Will that just be made available to the Gang of 8?
I believe it is only at the Gang of 8, and I don't know the setting yet. But we'll have information on that over the next 30 seconds.
Further detail on the extent of the DNI's involvement in this investigation, just what's been said publicly, or to what extent actually the IC is now involved in this investigation?
We had no indication. We get I'm not sure we've had any of the letters we've actually even written the DNI ever responded to over the last year. There may be one or two. So, I can tell you this much, that our contacts within the FBI said they were as surprised as anybody her showing up and skulking around. Go back to what I said. The DNI has no domestic criminal investigation responsibilities. Her job is to look at foreign interference in our elections. And this whole effort is the opposite of transparent. Here and here.
On that point exactly, there seems to be a wide discrepancy between what you're describing and what Director Dashman is describing in her letter with a mandate of foreign and domestic involvement in election security. Could you explain more for people who follow this very closely why it is that it's only foreign concerns that fall under this?
It goes back to the laws that created the whole intelligence oversight structure. It goes back to the National Security Act that was passed after President Nixon. It goes back to entities that were at least connected with the intelligence community involved in this little breakout called Watergate. And there was the whole notion that we need to make clear that our intelligence operations are outward looking, and America don't need to worry about those agencies looking at them. It's one of the components we go through regularly when we debate Section 702. It is the job of the FBI to look into that. And for her to show up.
All right, so that is Senator Warner there speaking in D.C. Talking about the intelligence oversight. Let's come back here at home and let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So happening right now, press conference underway for NASA's Artemis 2. James Brierton is in. Set us up, James.
All
right, so yesterday they did a wet dress rehearsal. That means they
fueled the rocket up to put it under the stress of an actual launch. And during that rehearsal, Nick, they discovered that there was a fuel leak. Somewhat expected. We saw this during Artemis 1. Deja vu all over again with Artemis 2. So the February launch opportunities for NASA's first mission back to the moon in over 50 years, those February dates are off the table. And now we're looking ahead to March. NASA officials are speaking right now at Kennedy Space Center to give us more results from yesterday's dress rehearsal.
With that, we'll start with Amit.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and really a big thanks to the media for helping bring the world this incredible mission. We're happy to join you as quickly as we can, coming off of the test last night. When I reflect on where we are today, I think about the team, the hands on the hardware, the countless hours of the challenges overcome, all the teamwork that has brought us to this point. I'm very, very grateful and proud of the team for doing that. I know the administrator shares that. The wet dress rehearsal we had last night was a critical milestone on the way to Artemis 2. That was the reason we went to the pad, was to do this test. It allowed our teams to test all the systems required in the all-up configuration. I think it's clear based on what we saw in real time, we're now targeting no earlier than a March for Artemis 2 launch. The Artemis 2 astronauts have been released from quarantine this morning. They remain in Houston. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to every team member who worked tirelessly on the wet dress rehearsal and all the critical steps that brought us to this point. Really, I mean, it was an incredible effort from so many people to get to this point. Their dedication, expertise, and perseverance has paved the way for us to enter a new launch window. Every challenge that all of you overcame and every detail you perfected led us here, and this milestone is a testament to your incredible work. We're going to review all the data as expected. We just got off console. Charlie got off a little bit later than the rest of us, but we'll review the data, address the items we saw during the wet dress that need future work, and we'll set another series of integrated tests as we go forward, and we'll gather everything we need, and we'll update you as soon as we can. I also want to personally extend my gratitude to this team here. We're missing some of the key team members, but they did just an incredible job getting through that test last night. We had challenges throughout, but the way they managed themselves with poise and dignity and got as much data as we could while the vehicle was in the test configuration, really just a phenomenal job. So really, really grateful to them, and I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Glaze to give you the real details.
Great. Thank you so much, Amit. And I'd also like to thank you all, those that are here in the room and those online. Thank you so much. You saw the image of the rocket out of the pad. Those of you that are here have been out there and seen it out there, and I can just say the excitement is just really building. You can feel it in the air when we're out here, when we're near the rocket. It really is spectacular. As Amit said, the wet dress rehearsal is an essential part on our path to flying our 4 crew members, Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy, around the moon and bringing them home. I can tell you that I was conversing with our commander, Reed Wiseman, as we went through wet dress yesterday and following. I know that Amit and the administrator also spoke with the commander, and so we've been staying in constant communication so that they know where we are and that we're all together on this as we are moving forward with our plans. I'd just like to say a couple of words about the wet dress. We really did learn a lot from the Artemis 1 mission, and we implemented a lot of the lessons learned yesterday through wet dress. And I would say many of those were demonstrated very successfully, and then we were able to actually gain additional data as we were going through the rehearsal. Myself, I know when I went in, I had 3 big things that I really wanted to make sure we were getting data on, and I would say all 3 of those we did a fantastic job of gathering the important data that we need. First off, everyone's aware of some of the challenges with the hydrogen tanking from Artemis 1, and we had made some changes. And I would say the fact that we got to full tanking yesterday on the first try was tremendous success, and we gathered an enormous amount of data on the processes and how we want to go forward with that in the future. So I think that was a huge success for us. Another area that I was really focused on was there's the purge barrier that we do the nitrogen purge. We have done in the past nitrogen purge between the crew module and the LAS, and we tried something new yesterday, and I really wanted to make sure that we gathered data on how that was working. That'll inform how we perform that in the future to keep the crew and the support staff that are in the white room, keeping them safe as we load the crew, and we got a lot of data there. Fantastic. And then the third area that I was really focused on is closing those doors, closing the hatches on the crew module and the launch abort system is a challenging process. It's very complex, a lot of steps. It's a big deal, and the more times we can practice that, the better. And I think we again got another rep yesterday. Our team's got some more work there. They've learned. We've again gathered a lot of important information that's going to help us as we're going forward. Of course, we also identified some additional issues, and we will be tackling those. They tackled them last night. The team did an amazing job. I want to thank Charlie for her incredible leadership, but Charlie and her teams and John and all of our teams that were involved with the wet dress yesterday tackled a variety of challenges in real time and did a great job there. As we've done all along, we rely on the data that we collect through these exercises like the wet dress rehearsal, and it's that data that leads us and sets the pace for where we're going. We have another opportunity in front of us to test our tanking operations and countdown. As Amit says, we will do another wet dress rehearsal in the future, and we look forward to that additional opportunity to learn more about our systems before we launch our crew to the moon. So we got a lot more work to do to get ready for that mission, and we are ready. Our teams are ready. Those incredible individuals that Amit noted, they are geared up and ready to take us forward. I'll hand it over to Charlie.
All right. Thanks, Lori. Appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who is here with us today, either in the room or online. So you heard Amit and Lori both talk about our wet dress rehearsal. So we got into our call to stations on Saturday evening and had our plan T0 for yesterday. Got into our go for tanking. We were a little bit behind getting out of the pad, and we got to go for tanking right around 11:30 local time. Got into chill down for both LOX and hydrogen. That went very well. Nothing notable there per the timeline, per the plan. When we got into the LH2 fast fill, which was around 12:29, is when we picked up our first leak in the TSMU in the cavity, which is where the flight and the ground plate come together, and it's that cavity in between. And it's in our 8-inch fill and drain line there. We have a QD that kind of connects those two together. So it was similar, I would say, to some of the signatures that we've seen during Artemis 1. Our leak rate was a little bit higher, somewhere in around the, I would say 12 to 14%. As you know, we went back, we did some testing between Artemis 1 and Artemis 2 and determined that 16% was an appropriate leak limit for LH2 in that cavity, and so that's what we managed to yesterday. So we saw the leak get up around our limit, and we did a stop flow revert, and when we did that, we saw, of course, the leak came down. We tried a contingency procedure that we used during Artemis 1, which is you let that QD warm up, you let the seal warm up, and you try it again. And so we did that a couple times, worked our way through it, and was able to load the core stage all the way to replenish. LOX load went for both core and upper, went really without any issue at all. And we got both stages to replenish, all stages replenish about 17:44 local time yesterday. We worked through a couple things. We had a targeted T0 originally for after 9 p.m. in the evening, but given the contingency procedures and whatnot, we had a new targeted T0 at just after midnight. And we picked up the count, T-minus 10 minutes. We counted through our got through our polls, picked up the count, counted through 6 minutes. Of course, the crew access arm comes back at 8. That was a big milestone for us. First time we'd ever done that in terminal count with the ground launch sequencer. So a big win on that. It came back just fine, latched into place just like it's supposed to. And we got down inside the 6 minutes, and that is where we began core stage pressurization. And so as we began that pressurization, we did see that the leak within the cavity came up pretty quick. We did a cutoff, which is a normal safing activity for us. We got into our safing steps. We saw the hydrogen concentration come down, and then later in the evening, we got into our drain operations. I am happy to report that early this morning, we had the core stage drain was completed at about 6 o'clock, just after 6 this morning, and right now we have all commodities off the vehicle. Both stages, both commodities are drained. We are in core stage boil off and inerting activities, and we're getting the pad open back up for control work. So that's a little bit of how the test went. Lori talked about some of the great things that came out of the test. I'll tell you, we had never loaded the core stage or the upper stage from the new 1.4 million gallon hydrogen sphere. We had gone through a complete verification and validation, but we didn't have the hardware to do it with, the flight hardware, and so that went really well. The lessons learned from how we do the sequencers in the software also went well yesterday. Already talked about locks and the CAA. And then the replenish valve. Those of you who were around for Artemis 1, remember we had to send a red crew to the pad for the replenish valve, and we made some design modifications on that valve, and it worked flawlessly yesterday. And so that went really good. Lori talked about the breathing air injection that we had for the service module purge, and that was a late mod that we did. Again, worked really well while we had the closeout crew out at the pad, and we were able to do a full closeout of the crew module. So all in all, a very successful day for us on many fronts, and then on a couple of others, we got some work we got to go do. And we're going to go do it. We'll figure it out, and we'll be back here talking to you once again about when we're going to target our next wet dress and the results from that. And with that, I'll hand it over to John.
Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, so this is the first opportunity for us to get the integrated stack for Artemis 2 on the launch pad with all the systems working together, and see it loaded full of the oxidizer and the fuel, and get to the countdown operations. It was a great demonstration for the hardware and for the team relative to performance. To me, the big takeaway was we got a chance for the rocket to talk to us, and it did just that. Test gave us exactly what we needed. It was an opportunity for us to wring out the system as well as the team before we ask our crew to go fly on launch day. I'm always particularly proud about the rigor that our teams put into reviewing the data. They stay hungry all the time, and I've been talking to some of them on the phone this morning about looking at data and what we're looking for, and just sharing some thoughts there. Going to the MMT was in place ahead of tanking operations, providing guidance to the launch director at our planned checkpoints that included the tanking operations as well as the go for terminal count. We also provided guidance on a couple other points, which I would say were minor risk acceptance items along the way. And that's, that's the big part of what the MMT does, is provides risk assessment and approves risk or not. And finally, I'll wrap it up by saying I fully support the agency's decision and the plan we've got moving forward. Rachel, back to you.
All right, it's time now for questions. We'll start here in the room, and then we have several already waiting in our question queue on the phone. Another reminder for those on the phone, you can get into the question queue with *1. And with that, let's start over here with Marcia Dunn.
Hello, Marcia Dunn, Associated Press. 3 years seems like a long time, enough time to wring out any hydrogen leak problems. Why wasn't there more aggressive testing checks since Artemis 1? And sorry, I'm just losing my thought here. If you could just explain how you can still be having the same problem 3 years later. Thanks.
Yeah, so in my old job as the core state or the SLS manager, after Artemis 1 and the challenges we had with the leaks, we took a pretty aggressive approach, as Charlie mentioned, to do some component level testing with these valves and the seals, and try to understand their behavior and their their tolerance for surface finish and FOD or debris or scratches or something like that, right? And so we got a good handle on that relative to how we install the flight side and the ground side interface there. But on the ground, we're pretty limited as to how much realism we can put into the test. And then at the end of the day, and what I would say to that is, we try to test like we fly, but this interface is a very complex interface, and when you're dealing with hydrogen, it's a small molecule, it's highly energetic, and we like it for that reason, and we do the best we can. And actually, this one caught us off guard, and the initial things that we were seeing, and the technical team felt like we either had some sort of misalignment or some sort of deformation or debris on the seal.
Yeah, I would just add that to Marcia's point, we did make some changes, while not to the cavity itself that John was explaining, but we did make some changes to several of the hydrogen components. I talked about the replenish valve. We had a leak there. We did a design mod. It worked great. We also made some changes. If you remember from Artemis 1, we also had changes in what I would call the back of the plate, in the purge can. And
all right, happening right now, you're watching NASA's Artemis 2 rehearsal press conference. Is happening live. We're going to take a step aside. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. All right, so yeah, snow still on the ground. As Carlene and I mentioned earlier, we almost slipped in the parking lot. Safe to say, just be safe if you have to venture outside. I know a lot of the main roads are clear, but that was not the case. If you look over the past couple of weekends, we dealt with ice, snow. Even before that, 3 weeks ago, we dealt with some sort of wintry mix. It's just been difficult on small businesses that depend on folks to come in their doors, especially during the weekends when folks are not ideally working. WCNC Charlotte's Autumn Bracey is live for us. Autumn, thank you for joining us. You got a chance to speak with those small businesses impacted by this winter weather.
I'm laughing at the fact that you all slipped or attempted to slip. I had some challenges with that too, Nick. But getting back to the reason we're here today, I spoke with the Gaston Business Association, one of their representatives, and he was telling me that they've been working to promote, these businesses that have been affected. Obviously, as a part of the Business Association, they work with dozens of them, specifically within Gaston County. He was able to connect us with some of those restaurants within the downtown area. So that's where we're at now. We're in downtown Gastonia. And so I spoke with someone, an employee with the Wandering Cup. It's a local coffee shop, and Mixed Kitchen as well. I'm going to highlight Mixed Kitchen real quick for you. I was speaking with one of their employees, and she told me that just this past weekend alone, they've lost $10,000. That is a lot of money, and that's because of like food spoiling and, of course, them not being able to be open. And the Wandering Cup, they've been impacted as well. They didn't give us a monetary amount, but they had to be closed for 4 days within the period of the last ice storm and the most recent snowstorm. So the impacts are certainly being felt. I would say, obviously, they need people's support. And they're especially concerned because we could see some, definitely not as heightened as what we've seen in most recent weeks, but we could see some wintry precipitation again. And so specifically with Mixed Kitchen, they said that they do plan to stay open. They've kind of, I guess they're learning the ropes of what they've been going through, and they are going, whether they have to stay in a hotel, whether they have to go pick up employees themselves, they say they are going to be open and operating amid, I guess, winter 2026.
Oh boy, yeah, I can only bet. It's just been tough. A lot of money, a lot of resources. That wasted and not being able to get people in the door. You can catch Autumn at 4 and 5:30. Autumn, for the record, I didn't slip. Carlene actually fell.
I did fall. I fell in the parking lot. Thankfully, no one was around, but the security camera definitely caught it. So our security guard is already teasing me, saying he's going to go back and review the footage.
Oh my goodness. Well, Carlene, I'm glad to know that you are away. Okay.
I am okay. I bounced right back up pretty quick.
Look, she's South
That's
Carolina
good.
tough. Autumn,
Love it.
thank you for your time. You catch Autumn at 4 and 5:30 this evening. Be safe out there, Autumn. All right.
Thanks.
Let's head back to the press conference, Artemis 2 press conference that we brought to you earlier.
I believe they're asking questions right
Okay, they're taking questions. Let's take a listen in.
Complicated, involved thing that made it one of the top priorities you wanted to check out in the wet dress? Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll comment on that. So the reason we wanted to check out the hatch during the wet dress is just there is limited opportunity to go do that with the integrated vehicle. And we had an opportunity during CDDT for the first time, but the environment's a little bit different being out at the pad. And yes, it's the same hatch, closes the same way, but there's something unique and different about being out at the pad in a cryogenically fueled environment of the rocket that is underneath. And so we wanted to take that opportunity to have the closeout crew demonstrate that. In terms of the complexity of the hatches, there's 2 of them. First off, there's 2 of them to go close out. Folks that were around from Shuttle maybe remember the single hatch and the timelines associated with that. This one's a little bit different because you got to get the crew module hatch closed. You've got to get, Lori mentioned, the purge barrier out, which is it serves as kind of like the name implies, a barrier for that interstitial area, and it's multiple components that come out, and then there's just the closeout of the white room itself. So there's just a timeline and a waterfall of work. I don't know that there's any one thing that is very complex about it. It's just the series of work. And of course, for us, we're always monitoring that work because it does contribute to how long our crew is on their back before we get to T0.
All right, we'll take another one from the phone from Joey Roulette with Reuters.
Hi, thanks. Questions for anyone. I just wanted to re-ask Marcia's question on why this hydrogen leak caught you guys off guard this time. As John Honeycutt said, why wasn't this detected earlier as a possible thing that could come up? And then also I just wanted to get clarity on the Orion closeout work. I know we just talked about the Orion issue, but Jared Isaacman said that additional factors included extended Orion closeout work. And so what is the work ahead on Orion? Thanks.
I'll take the first part. Maybe you guys can do the Orion. Yeah, Joey, it's a good question. As we said, we test the component level, right? And we made the improvements we made from Artemis 1. I think, and I don't want to get ahead of the data review, but part of I think what might be contributing to it, and we have to go inspect the seal and see if it was, what condition it's in. But, when we're mated to the tail service mast and we roll, that rollout environment is very complicated. As you can see the size of the machine there and, kind of the way in which we have to push it out to the pad. So, and while we're rolling, that interface is in communication. And so, we don't really know exactly. It's very hard to predict kind of what credit we can take for and what the acceleration environment is all the way up and down the stack. When we did Artemis 1, in fact, we did a lot of stop and start tests to see if we could characterize it. But even then, it's pretty complicated from a stress and strain standpoint. And so that's not an excuse. It's just that's the first configuration in which we've been able to witness that environment. Lots of times when we look at the duration the rocket can stay at the pad, we have very good understanding of like onshore winds and those loads and how those affect the mated stack, because that's more predictable. The one thing that's very hard for us and we kind of keep in our pocket as pretty constrained is the number of rolls. Those of you guys that followed Artemis 1, we were very particular about that because we can't take credit for the witness of that rollout environment. It's very complicated. And so we think that's a contributor, but again, we have to tear the seal apart and see what happened. And I'll leave that for the Orion question for y'all.
I was live in Cape Canaveral, Florida right now. NASA Artemis 2 rehearsal press conference underway. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So happening right now in Pima County, Arizona, we're waiting to hear from authorities there as the investigation continues into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. She is a mother of Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, who is asking for prayers for her mother's safe return as Arizona authorities continue to investigate her possible abduction. We're expecting to hear from authorities soon, along with a special report from NBC. So hang on tight. We'll get there to you. We'll get that to you as soon as we can. But in the meantime, we want to head back to Cape Canaveral, Florida, where happening right now, press conference is underway. NASA's Artemis 2 rehearsal press conference. Let's take a listen in.
with the hydrogen concentrations in the umbilical cavity. Because when we first saw it, we first saw the report, you were up to about 55% or somewhere in that neighborhood. Did you see elevated hydrogen concentration throughout fast fill, or did you see a change near the point where you tripped the limit? And then were you seeing any difference between the flows through the fill and drain line and the bleed line, either in that space of time, or again, you talked about getting into pressurization at T-minus 6 minutes. I assume you get into drain back at that point through the bleed line. Is that what is that what possibly tripped the limit during terminal count?
So let me start with when we saw the leaks. Let me start there. So, what we have learned during the Artemis tanking campaign is that this interface is sensitive to flow rates and pressures. We learned that during Artemis 1, and we saw the same thing. Yesterday. It was when we went to fast fill. We were in slow fill. We were within our limits and within our bands. It was when we transitioned to fast fill that we began to see the limits creeping up, or the concentrations within the cavity creeping up. And we did, was it a steady rate? I mean, it increased. We got up to, probably 12, 14%. And then when we got close to the 16%, that's when we did stop flow and revert, and decided to invoke our procedure for letting that interface warm up and then retrying it again. During Artemis 1, we found that sometimes that was very successful. I mean, that's a pressure-assisted seal, so sometimes letting it warm up and then putting some more pressure across it, you'll see the seal improve. And so that was the goal yesterday. When we tried it the second time, the performance was pretty similar. We have the ability, and what we do in that case is that we are actually pressurizing in the storage area, in the sphere itself, and we're kind of using that pressure to, hydrogen's light, and so you put some pressure in the system and kind of push it, as we say, push it up the hill. And so we started out with a lower pressure, but as we put additional pressure and got back closer to our fast fill rates, we started to see the leak. And so it was, I would say, in and around the 12 to, when we got up to 16%, we would take action. We saw that through the 3 different contingencies, but we were able to manage it. We would manage it with the pressure, get back within your leak rate in the cavity or get close to it. And so that's how we managed to get all the way to replenish. In terms of when we saw the spike in the leak, it was in terminal count. It was as we began to pressurize the tank, and whether that came from through the 8-inch or the 4-inch bleed, we really need to get into the plate and take a look, and we'll know more, in a few days when we get in there. So it'd be hard to say at this point. Again, the team's going through the data, so if you ask me tomorrow, I might have a better answer. But right now, I'd tell you that based on the timing, it looked like in real time that it was likely through the 8-inch. Could have been the 4 though. So we'll take a look at all that and see what was going on there. But it did go up, and it went up very quickly, and so we knew that we had something there we didn't understand. That's why the operator immediately gave a cutoff, and we got into safing.
Okay, we'll go to Irene Klotz here, and then Will Robinson-Smith, and then we'll take a few more from the phone.
Hi, Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. I have a question first for Charlie or John. You ended up adjusting the timing for the wet dress because of the cold, but then did the wet dress in the really cold. Can you just explain a little bit about what you were doing during those 2 days, and if there was any equipment or systems that were close to qualification limits because of the cold? And for Amit, did the Falcon 9 upper stage anomaly yesterday do anything for your planning for Crew 12 launch? Thanks.
I'll do the Falcon 9 first, guys, then hand it to you guys. Yeah, thanks, Irene. Yeah, we did. SpaceX did a report as soon as it happened on a Starlink flight that they had an upper stage anomaly. They're working that with the FAA. So I don't want to get in front of that. The FAA is the lead investigative body. We do have our teams with commercial crew embedded in that investigation. And so in terms of how it affects our plans for Crew 12, et cetera, we're pressing towards our Crew 12 window. We're planning towards, just a week, a little bit more than a week from now to start that preparation. But again, that's going to be contingent on the return to flight rationale, which we're heavily partnered with both the FAA and SpaceX.
All right, the 2 days that we delayed wet dress. So let me say a couple things that weren't part of your question, but I'm really proud of the team that worked so hard to get to wet dress early. Right, we looked at what we could do to get there early. Our team had the work done. We were prepared to do wet dress 2 days earlier than we actually did it. And so that actually ended up being a wonderful thing. Now, the weather wasn't so wonderful, right? We were in unprecedented cold here in the state of Florida. We were very deliberate about looking at the weather and determining if we were in a configuration to do the test. Originally would have been, our T0 would have been Saturday evening when we ended up doing our call to stations. If you recall, on Saturday evening it was very cold and it was very windy, and we did look at the weather and look at our criteria. The main criteria there for a wet dress, which is different than launch. On launch day you absolutely have requirements for temperature and winds and other things. For wet dress, we did look at our temperatures because we needed to determine if we were within our certification limits for the ground hardware as well as for the flight hardware, and we looked at winds, and winds was really the more concerning item. There was 37.5 knots was what we were looking at as our constraint. And that was the primary driver for when we moved the wet dress originally from Saturday to Monday. And that was a great call, because those of you who were here in the state of Florida during that time, you know that we had 50+ knot winds on Saturday night. And so that would not have been a good configuration for us to be tanked in. It certainly would not have been a good configuration for us to send our closeout crew to the pad. And so that was part of the consideration for moving it. In terms of how did things go, we certainly saw in some of our, I'll say, pneumatic equipment, right, that is sensitive to temperatures. You know, we saw some fluctuation in some of our regs, but we have as part of the configuration and part of the control on those, they have some automatic or E-reg control that accounts for changes in temperature and pressure. And so we were able to manage all of that. There wasn't anything significant that I would say came out of yesterday other than, you know, activation of some heaters and those types of things. In terms of protecting the vehicle, we had purge go into the aft skirts during the, excuse me, during the cold weather period. Sorry. Sorry about that. We had purge go into the vehicle. We had heaters configured. So in terms of taking care of the hardware at the pad, we had all the right things in place. All right.
Okay, let's go over here to Will Robinson Smith.
Hi, Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight Now. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. A question first to Charlie and then a second to Amit. For Charlie, in the blog post that came out sort of summarizing wet dress yesterday, it mentioned that there were troubleshooting issues regarding to audio comms across the ground teams that have been present for the past few weeks, including during WDR. Can you characterize what those were, and are they the same or different than what we're seeing during CDDT in the VAB? And then for Amit, as you're looking towards the future of SLS, bringing in the exploration upper stage, I know the green run is coming up for that in the somewhat near future. Can you talk about some of the planning to maybe nip some of the issues that you've had with the vehicle in the bud for that second version of SLS that's coming down the pike to hopefully make the process to getting to launch a little bit easier? Thanks.
You need a break.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and then I'll do
sure.
the
No, it's good. We're looking at the production there for what we're doing at Stennis and how to make those tests more efficient. In fact, we came up with a unique nozzle config so we can do sea level testing of the vacuum engines to make that a little bit better. We'll see how that works. But across the board, we're trying to learn manufacturing fabrication techniques to make that more quick too. I mean, these are big circumferential welds. The diameter is pretty large. We're using a slightly thinner material because we're very mass sensitive there, and so we're learning those things both at Michoud and we're configuring the rigs at Stennis. But I mean, as we go, as we learn every core stage and is a little bit different, right? As was pointed out earlier, it's an experimental vehicle, and just I'm reminded again, for almost 4 days and 40 years from Challenger, nobody sitting in one of these chairs needs to be calling any of these vehicles operational. So, Charlie.
Yeah, so the comm issue that I believe you're referring to is a few days before wet dress, and I forget now exactly how many, but we had a significant comm outage in LC-39 with the ground communication system, and that's the OIS loops that we use to communicate across our teams, both here at Kennedy and then back to our support centers across the country. And so we ended up calling in, I'll say, a suite of experts to go look at what might be causing that outage, and it really ended up being I'll say, a series of events that that had happened, and it was within the and I'm probably not the right person to answer this in this level of detail, but let me just say that it was in the kind of the details of the code. It was an edge case where you had a series of events that had to line up just perfect, and they did, and it ended up taking out our one of our LC-39 communication servers. So the team did a great job, pulled in a lot of experts, including the supplier of this equipment and NASA experts from across the country. They did a deep dive on all of this, were able to diagnose the root cause right away, put a series of workarounds in place, and I'm happy to report that the comm worked fine during the wet dress rehearsal. And wet dress and launch are a great test case, because if you think about, when you're doing a single test, you might have a handful, maybe you got 30, 40 users, but on wet dress day, you've got centers across the country. We're all tied together. You've got hundreds, maybe thousands of users. So there's a big load on the system, and it worked really well. So the team did a great job resolving that issue.
All right, so you're watching from Cape Canaveral, Florida, a press conference on Artemis 2. James Raritan is here in studio with more insight, because you're tracking this whole thing.
Yeah, we've been tracking this very closely. We're preparing for special launch coverage right here on WCNC Plus. Brad Panovich will be here when this rocket does go up. The earliest opportunity to launch this rocket now looks like it's going to be March. You can see it's still sitting out there on the launch pad at Cape Canaveral in Florida. As we were just hearing, they were delayed a couple days because of the very frigid temperatures. As it was snowing here in Charlotte, they had too cold of temperatures in Florida to do their proper tests. They got around to those tests on Monday, Nick. They discovered during those tests that there was a fuel leak, there was a comm issue, things that they're going to work through, but that's going to add time to the timeline, so it won't be until March that we could see NASA return 4 astronauts on a lunar mission. Artemis 2 is destined to take 4 astronauts around the moon and back to Earth, the first time we have flown astronauts on a lunar mission since the Apollo program ended in 1972. And then the next mission, Artemis 3, is set to return footprints onto the lunar surface.
Wow, an extensive breakdown right there, James, and we'll continue to track this. Also, below on the bottom of your screen, we'll continue to keep our eye on a press conference.
Special report's coming up.
Special report is about to start. Update on the investigation into Nancy Guthrie, Today's Show co-host Savannah Guthrie's mother. Let's take a listen into that NBC special report.
Special report. Here's Craig Melvin.
And a good day to you. We're coming on the air with breaking news out of Arizona, where the Pima County Sheriff and the FBI are now about to give an update on the disappearance of Savannah Guthrie's 84-year-old mother, Nancy. She was last seen Saturday night. Authorities say that they believe she was taken from her home in Tucson against her will. They are treating that home as a crime scene. Sheriff also saying possible DNA evidence was found at the scene, again pleading for the public's help. Let's listen in.
Generalities, and I'm not used to everybody hanging on to my words and then trying to hold me accountable for what I say, but I understand. So we're going to try our best to be succinct with you in the future, and also more important for you to understand is we have a lot of work in front of us. We have a job to do, and we have someone's life who is in jeopardy. And so job number one is we got to find her, and we got to work hard to do that. I understand there's great attention on this, and rightfully so, and I appreciate it, and I thank you for it, because it has generated a lot of leads for us. And so we're tracking those leads, and we're doing things with evidence that you would expect us to be doing. So having said that, we're going to set this up. I know that a number of you yesterday, you guys drove me crazy. Yesterday I was going from a.m. to all the way till 9, 10, 11, midnight, answering concerns and questions, and it's just too tough. And it's not fair to the case. So what I'm going to tell you is today we're going to do this similar to what we're doing right now. Here we'll take questions. It's not really my briefing, it's your briefing. You'll be able to ask us some questions. We'll probably shut you off after a while because I just can't be here all day. We have work to do. But we'll take some questions, and then in a couple of days, unless something breaks, we'll do this every couple of days. So, and we'll set up with you through our PIO teams to give you anything that comes up that might change, but clearly they will notify you on these, what I call media briefings. So with that, I'm going to ask John to come up. If you've got a statement to say, John, and then we'll take some questions and we'll get back to work.
Hello, I'm John Edwards. My spelling is Jonedwards. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI's office here in Tucson. First, we want the community to know that the FBI is doing everything in our power to bring Nancy Guthrie home to her family. The FBI is working alongside the Pima County Sheriff's Department on this incident. In terms of what the FBI is doing, we are providing the following support. Primarily, it's analytical and technical support in the following ways. We're downloading and analyzing cell phones, obtaining cell tower information, conducting interviews, and providing any and all investigative support that the Sheriff's Department needs. We're looking at this from every angle, but we need your help. If you live in the area or saw something on Saturday night, the 31st of January, or Sunday morning, the 1st of February, please report it to the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Every lead and tip is important. We are aggressively pursuing and looking into every single one. Again, please help us bring Nancy Guthrie home. Thank you.
We'll take some questions.
Sheriff, is there any indication so far as to whether this was a random abduction or targeted?
It's like I said earlier, we're looking at all the leads, and we don't know. We're going to assume both sides of that. We'll look at both sides of that.
Sheriff, do you have any idea what Nancy Guthrie was wearing, or the type of car that she might have left from, or any identifiable information that the public could use to help with those tips?
We do not.
Sheriff, do you believe that one or more than one person was involved in the kidnapping?
I just no clue. It could have been one. It could have been more.
Is there any indication that Nancy Guthrie is still alive? We know the medication played a critical role here. It's been 48 hours. She needs it every single day. Are you looking for someone that is still alive?
We hope we are. We hope we are.
Sheriff, you said earlier that you don't believe there's a wider threat to the public. If you're not sure if it's targeted, why do you believe there's no wider threat to the public?
Well, we have crime in Tucson all the time, right? Like any city. And so when you say a threat to the public, is there somebody out there who's kidnapping elderly people in the middle of the night every night? We've not heard that. We don't believe that's the case. We do believe that Nancy was taken from her home against her will, and that's where we're at.
Sheriff, when you reference violence at the site, can you elaborate on that? And also, was there a sign of forced entry, any valuables taken, any bank or ATM cards used after her disappearance?
We're not getting into that. What I'd tell you is, like any crime scene, we processed this crime scene. We gathered all the evidence we could, to include looking for what? Fingerprints, DNA, camera images, everything you can imagine, and we gathered that out. Those things have been submitted forward to labs, to technological companies to help us, and we're like you. We're waiting for those returns to come back.
Did you find DNA that did not belong in that house? The window of time from when she was last seen to when she was reported missing, and I know you guys are asking for help from the public, is there any way to narrow down what time you might be helpful? I know there was a report about a pacemaker dinging like around 2 o'clock in the morning. Is there any way to indicate to people, hey, look around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. to help them identify what they might have?
You know, I really don't want to get into narrowing down the time, because narrowing it down means we could miss some tips and leads. We're working on with the data we've submitted for investigative analysis. We're working to see if that time can be tightened up. But for now, we're going with what we told you earlier. She was dropped off at 9:30, and she was found to be missing at about 11 o'clock Sunday morning.
Sheriff,
Let me get this report.
DNA of anyone else found in the house?
We've submitted all kinds of samples for DNA, and we've gotten some back, but nothing to indicate any suspects.
Anybody strange in the neighborhood? I know you're looking at video, different surveillance camera, anything that we should be looking at, different cars?
I have nothing in that regard.
Have any demands been made by kidnappers?
We have all kinds of investigative leads we're working on.
Sheriff, we noticed that the camera on the front of the house is missing. Do you believe the perpetrator purposely took the camera?
Don't know that. We're looking into that as well. Yes, sir.
That scene been fully processed now. We saw deputies leave around 6 o'clock last night. We didn't see tape go up. You know, an Amazon driver was able to walk right up to the door. Is that pretty standard for how you handle this?
The scene is done. We're done with the residents. If we need to go back to get, maybe we want to do something with some other piece of evidence there, we contact the family and let them know. But we've turned that over to the family. I don't have the time, but it was sometime yesterday, I believe.
Have you recovered any tire tracks or any footprints around the house?
No.
Was there any kind of...
Could you please take us through the timeline that you've established of the events so far, and with as much...
9:45, 9:30, 9:45, we were told she was left at her home by the family. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the family got notice from somebody at church that she was not at church. They went to the home, found her to be missing. That's the timeline. From Saturday night, 9:45, we'll say, to Sunday morning, 11 o'clock. Let me get somebody back here, please.
Have you interviewed the people that reported her missing, the people from the...
That's the family. Oh, from the church as well. We're doing all kinds of interviews, yes, I'm sure we have.
Have you been able to access the footage from the cameras at the house?
That's all been submitted, and we're doing our best with those companies who own those cameras or built those cameras.
Are there any plans to release those videos from the cameras, from the surveillance? Are there any plans to release the video from the cameras, surveillance footage?
We don't even have them yet, so no, not at this time. This is an active investigation.
There's a report of a suspicious man a few doors down last week. Is that anything that you guys are aware of?
I'm not aware of it. My detectives may be. There's a lot of detective work being done, and I just can't get into those weeds or even discuss with you what they may not have learned. Yes, ma'am.
Support from the board yesterday. Are there specific resources that maybe the board has not granted that would have made a difference responding to this case?
Well, you know, that's getting into my own local politics. I apologize. Yes, the board a few weeks ago denied a request for more cameras, more drones, more AI capabilities with our own body-worn cameras. All those things, you know, you'd have to talk to the board. I'm not probably not the right time to go into this.
Sheriff,
let me get somebody else here.
Sheriff,
Yes.
she's still in this area.
Do we believe
She's still in this area, or is there somewhere else?
we don't know where she is? So we're be like any investigation. You start from the point of where we last saw her, and we work out, and we are working as far out as we can go.
Sheriff,
were there evidence of forced entry at the house, like any broken windows or whatever? Does it seem like people just went in and out the
There are concerns at the house that concerned us from the early on part of this investigation, and that's all I will tell you. Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff, is there any history with Nancy needing police at her place or concerns where she was worried about
somebody following or?
You know, our investigative team has looked into all of those things, and that has not been brought to my attention. So she may have had something like that, but I'm not aware of it.
What is the extent of collaboration with the federal government? Obviously, FBI is here, CBP, are there other agencies also involved?
CBP's role in this was in our search and rescue mission, where we constantly use them. They have great dogs too. Our dogs aren't tracking dogs for this. Theirs are. And so they came out and did that. Anybody else, though, that we've asked for help from, whether it's the FBI, I know if we needed help from CBP or DEA or ATF, they would gladly give it. I've heard from leadership from all sorts of agencies, not just at the federal level, but across the state, every one of them saying, Sheriff, you need anything, we're here.
Sure. So you obviously said investigators, when they got on scene, they found suspicious circumstances. When the family called originally to report her missing, did they say anything about the state of the home?
I don't know that. I don't know. Let me hang on. Let me make sure I'm getting some different people here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so there was blood that was found inside the house and you're testing it for DNA. How much blood and where was it?
I'm not saying there's blood inside that house or outside that house. What I'm saying is our team processed a scene like you would think of any crime scene. We go in and we process it. We look for things like that, blood, DNA, any kind of physical evidence, fingerprints, anything. And all of that is gathered and submitted to a lab. That lab will report back to us what they find. So far, what we found from that lab is nothing that would tell us this is who did this.
We'll take a couple more questions, and then the sheriff's got to go.
Sheriff, can you walk through the evidence that was found at the scene in as much detail as possible?
No, I cannot.
What is the bottleneck to the surveillance footage? I know you said some of it is in the cloud, but you've also been reached out to tech companies that are saying they're cooperating. Why do not have the surveillance footage on
That's what I tell them. How come I don't have this? Where's my evidence? It is a process, and I'm sorry, but you know, we're grateful that there's large corporations and companies who have bent over backwards to help us, to say, hey, Sheriff, tell us what you need. And so, yeah, I can't slam them. And we've asked them. They know the urgency here. But I'm like you. What do you mean I don't know that now? Yeah, it's tough.
The answer that you gave earlier, you were asked if there
Last question.
You were asked if there was any ransom, and you didn't say no. You said we're following all leads. Does that mean a ransom has come in?
We're following all leads we have. That's all I can tell you. We've got hundreds of leads, and it's from you that produce those leads by telling people we need help, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm not going to get into all that. We have a team designated to deal with all of our leads. They're looking into all of that. We are sharing all of our leads with the FBI. They are helping us in evaluating those leads, how good they are, where that priority should be. And so we're just... But look, I know you guys are doing your job, and you're doing a great job. But we have a job to do too, and I really need to back away from this for a while, and we'll see you unless something breaks. We'll see you Thursday morning. PIO will give you a time frame. I'm guessing somewhere around 11:30.
Thank you.
I need your emails. If you are not on the email list, get with me in the corner.
Okay, there you have it. The sheriff of Pima County, Arizona there, briefing reporters for about 14 minutes or so, giving us the latest on the investigation into the abduction of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, of course, mother of our friend and colleague here at NBC News, Savannah Guthrie, reiterating there, the sheriff, that we don't know where she is. He's repeated that. Please help us bring Nancy Guthrie home. When asked whether she was targeted or taken at random, he said, we do not know. We're going to look at both sides here. Also noteworthy that the FBI involved in the investigation now, John Edwards, the assistant special agent in charge of Tucson there, the Tucson Bureau of the FBI. We heard from him briefly at the beginning of that. The sheriff also pointing out that the scene has been fully processed. Also important to note here that the sheriff's saying that at this point we don't have any idea how many people were involved in the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. We're joined now by our national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent, Tom Winter. Tom, again, noteworthy that the FBI now involved. The FBI saying it's doing everything in its everything in its power, rather, to bring Nancy Guthrie home. What does the FBI's involvement look like? What does that mean for the investigation moving forward?
Yeah, sure. So the FBI's involvement here, they're involved on the technical side. Was also encouraged to hear that they're involved on the interview side, that they're conducting those interviews, organizing that. Those interviews are also being shared by the Sheriff's Department. They've got their CAS team there. That's the Cellular Analysis Survey Team. What they do is they look for Nancy Guthrie's house. They know where it is on the map, and they have a map of cell phone towers in and around that house and any other potential location that they would be looking for. And if you think of a cell phone tower as a piece of pie, and that there are 3 pieces on that pie, and that's where the antennas are located, you look at all the antennas that would have coverage over that house, over that area, and some other details that are law enforcement sensitive that I'm not going to share. They put that information together and they start to develop a baseline. So if they were going to look and say you and I were neighbors, they would say, well, Tom's cell phone's generally always there, and Craig's cell phone's generally always there, and it's at night when they're not at work. Start to look for some things that don't belong. And there's some other things that they look for in the process of processing that area from a cellular standpoint, and using computers and some pretty accelerated programs start to develop whether or not there are any needles in a stack of needles that are not normally there. And that process is a little bit more complicated than what I'm sharing, but that's one of the things that they're working on. They're also analyzing the cell phone, and so I'm encouraged to hear that they're analyzing Nancy Guthrie's cell phone. It sounds like what they would be doing here, potentially any other individuals that they would want to interview. So that's going on. I was surprised to hear from the sheriff that they have not been able to look at
the surveillance,
suggesting the surveillance video from Nancy Guthrie's home, and then presumably, according to his own statements, that information is backed up on the cloud. And so that's something that they would serve a subpoena to any one of the companies that would have that service. That would be an exigent circumstance at this point, meaning that they can ask for that information and not have to wait for a certain period of time. So I'm curious about that. There was a question asked during the press conference that I've been wondering about, which is the idea of any sort of tire tracks. Given where the home is located, the fact that there's some vegetation, some brush, and that earlier the sheriff said, hey, we don't see any sign of any cars or any automobiles from any of the other cameras from the homes surrounding Nancy Guthrie's home. It was curious to hear that and wondering whether or not there'd be an ATV or any sort of other type of vehicle that could have been behind the home for anybody that was involved in this abduction. Taking a step back, the sheriff's saying, we don't know where she is. I think if you're the Guthries, if you're me, if you're anybody else, their primary concern, I think at this point, Craig, is whoever has her, whoever was involved in this, whoever has knowledge of this crime, and there are definitely people that I'm sure do.
Absolutely.
Look, they're not going to ask any questions. I can imagine they're going to ask any questions. I wouldn't ask any questions. Drop off Nancy Guthrie at a hospital. Drop off at a fire station. Do something there to help out Nancy. It might not be too late. Holding out hope for that outcome. Law enforcement will do its thing later.
The family has been adamant from the beginning of all of this that they simply just want Nancy Guthrie home. They want her home. The medications that she takes are needed for survival. And to your point, time is of the essence. And if you know something, say something. Drop off. Liz Kreutz is following this story for us. She is in Tucson. She is there at that news conference that just wrapped up. And Liz, it was interesting to hear the sheriff say that we should not expect another update until Thursday morning unless there's a break in the case.
Yeah, Craig, I thought it was a very interesting press conference here because it was not so much a press conference as it was a Q&A. The sheriff came out and said, essentially, I know I've been going around doing interviews with all these different outlets, whereas we've heard he's given different answers at times to different news outlets. And now this time he seems to have decided to come out and just address everybody at once. He didn't really give any update of his own. I think a lot of us were hoping that we would get some new details. Instead, he let reporters ask questions questions, and he gave very short, brief responses to all of those, in fact, going into less detail than he has over the past 24 hours. He flat out said, we have a lot of work in front of us. He said, we don't know where she is. And when asked if they're looking for someone who's alive, he said, we hope we are. And I also found it really notable about the footage. I mean, the number one thing that they say is going to help them crack this case is surveillance footage. And knowing that they are still trying to access the footage from the home is concerning. He says they're working on it with the big tech companies to try to access the cloud. And beyond that, the sheriff has told us, and we've talked about this, how challenging it is in this particular neighborhood because it's very dark. The homes are on large plots, acre lots, very much removed from the street, and there's a lot of this tall desert brush surrounding all of the homes. All of that, when you drive around, making it clear that it would become very difficult to find any kind of security footage that might be able to have seen something on the street.
Liz Courts-Force there in Tucson at the scene of that news conference that just wrapped up. Liz, thank you so much again. We will, of course, continue to follow the story very closely over the next few hours, next few days as well, until there's a resolution. But to reiterate Tom's point, the family just wants Nancy Guthrie home. They want their 84-year-old matriarch at home. She needs medications for survival. Time is of the essence. The family says no questions asked, just let her go. That concludes this NBC News special report. Anyone with information about the whereabouts of Nancy Guthrie is asked to call 1-800-CALL-FBI. I'm Craig Melvin. Thank you for watching.
And that was an NBC special report. So right now, before we had the break, we are tracking some police activity in Concord. That's where we find Jesse Pierre, who is there on the scene, following up on the deadly shooting from over the weekend. But we're going to head to break first as we take a look at that scene, and we're going to check in with Jesse Pierre in just 2 minutes. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So we are continuing to follow up on a shooting from over the weekend. 4 people shot at an apartment complex in Concord on Sunday, leaving 2 people dead. We're sending it live to Jesse Pierre, who's live in Concord. So Jesse, what we saw play out before we went to break and before we got to you, police activity right behind you. tell us what you're seeing and tell us what you know so far about this investigation.
Well, I've been here since early this morning, and one thing that I noticed around this apartment is I was like, oh, there's a lot of police just driving in the area. And so just moments ago, the scene got cleared, but there were 2 large armored trucks. We could actually jump into that video if you can show that. There was 2 large armored trucks that came here. Several police patrol cars came over here, and, they blocked the area to this apartment complex, Brook Point Apartments. And again, it was a pretty nice size police presence here, including, again, those 2 large armored trucks. And we are looking to confirm if that is related to the shooting that happened on Sunday night. Now, that happened at 11 o'clock, again, at the Brook Point Apartments on Farrington Drive Northwest at 11 p.m. at night on Sunday, where 4 people were shot. 2 of them have died, and 2 of them were rushed to the hospital. We have checked in with Concord Police. We reached out, and actually, if you want to show video now, there's this other armored truck that came in earlier, and so again, we're trying to figure out if the scenes were connected, but all day throughout the day since we've been here, again, there was just a lot of police activity within the area. We've been just kind of across the street at this church and just kind of keeping our eye on it, but here's the again, armored truck leaving that apartment complex right now, and they went to that back area where that shooting happened. There was a lot of glass shattered on the ground in that area. And it seems like whether the shooting happened with cars involved or the people who were shot were in the cars, it's still unclear. But from folks that I spoke to who live or come to this area frequently, they say it's not a really bad neighborhood, and they were actually shocked to see, or hear about the gunfire and the shooting that happened that night. Again, 2 people died and 2 people were rushed to the hospital. As of right now, we have not gotten the identity of those 4 people. We have reached out to Concord Police to find out if the police activity happening today and what happened on Sunday was connected. We have reached out to find out if there's been any arrests made, any information on a motive or search for any suspects, and we are waiting to hear back. But again, just moments ago, the area has just been cleared. Nick?
All right, Jessie Pierre live there in Concord. She'll be live at 5 and 6 o'clock tonight with the latest. Jessie, thank you. All right, so let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivan. We want to go now to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison meeting today to discuss the impact of federal immigration enforcement and detention on children and their families across the state. This comes following multiple high-profile enforcement operations there in Minnesota, including the case of 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his father. He's taking questions right now. Let's take a listen to it.
Minnesotan has a camera. Keep filming. Keep keeping track of this. Keep accountability.
Governor, there seems to be a feeling among many in Minnesota that there's no path out of this, that there's no way through the tunnel. Where did you leave things with Tom Homan? When's the last time you spoke to him? Is there anything
This morning.
complicated with?
This morning. And I articulated again, we're not in a negotiation. We're not in a demand. We follow law. They know that. You've reported on that. And my expectation, not a demand, my expectation is draw down these forces, get them all out of here, give us the ability to investigate the murders of our neighbors and stop the assault on Minnesota. It would be my expectation, and it's there in their court, especially after everything that's happened here and with Liam and Elizabeth and countless faceless others who are our children, that they will address this. And it's my expectation, and that we will see a dramatic shift in where this is at for the better for Minnesota starting this week. That would be my expectation. So yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Governor Walz. There are 4 students in the Columbia Heights School District that are currently being detained in Dilley, Texas. Have you been able to talk to the families?
Yeah, this RT was anybody. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Zena Stenvik, Superintendent, Columbia Heights. Our staff members who are here with us today are in connection and contact with the legal counsel for the families. So we're working on it. We'd like them back.
Governor, I'm wondering if session is somehow 2 weeks away. Are you thinking about any sort of relief or funding package for everything from food security for families who can't go to school or work? Cities are saying their law enforcement offices are under strain. Anything along those lines that you're starting to think about?
Yeah, and our legislative team is here, and we're working with legislators who want to get this done. I mean, our dilemma will be in a session is that we have a split legislature, and the leadership in the House has not said a word about the children. They've not said a word condemning the killing of Alex. Won't even address it. Continue to dodge the question. So my concern is that in our agencies, we're trying to do what's allowed through the executive branch to be able to address some of those things. We do need, I think, some legislative fixes. I do think we need to, especially with our schools, understanding, and I don't think it's sinking in yet, the immense costs that are being put on these very tight budgets. Simultaneously, all of our federal funding is being, what's the term?
Impounded.
Impounded illegally. So the assault you're seeing is one level. The assault that we're seeing in the agencies and the ability to do the things that the state will need to do in this crisis is also being undermined. They are doing everything they can to destroy the foundational pieces of what makes Minnesota great. And we are getting zero help from Republican legislators who are going to have to be a part of this. And look, I continue to say this. Not a single one of our leadership at the federal level have said a word about this, being Tom Emmer being the number 3 person in the House.
All right, so we have some breaking news into our newsroom here on Live Impact News. We want to send it now to House Speaker Mike Johnson after the House voted to reopen the government, sending the bill to President Trump's desk to end this brief shutdown. Let's take a listen in.
Have engaged in good faith with Democrats in the Senate, and they've said they would negotiate on the final bill, the Homeland Bill. And you might say, well, now that 96% of the government is funded, it's just 4% what's out there, but it's a very important 4%. Because remember what the Homeland Security Bill covers. It's not just Immigration Customs Enforcement. It's not just Customs and Border Patrol. It is TSA. It's the agents who keep us safe in the airports and keep air travel moving. It's the Coast Guard. It's Secret Service. It's FEMA. We're in the middle of winter storms that people are still digging out from. So this is no time to play games with that funding. We hope that they will operate in good faith over the next 10 days as we negotiate this. The president, again, has reached out. We are restoring calm in Minnesota, but again, we make the plea and the demand that the governors and the mayors in these blue states and blue cities participate with federal law enforcement so that we have a safer environment in which to implement and to enforce federal immigration laws. Very, very important, and it's something the American people demand and deserve. So we'll go forward now. We hope that everyone is in good faith. We think the next 2 weeks will be critical, but I hope that they will not keep that funding in suspense because it's too important to the American people.
Mr.
Chad.
Speaker, good afternoon. Do you really think that they can work out something in such? Do you really think that they can work out something in such a short time period? That's not much time.
I do. I mean, if everyone comes to the table in good faith, I'll tell you what we are not going to do. We're not going to work towards some sort of amnesty program or something. Some Democrats have whispered that that's what they would be about. We are not going to impede the enforcement of federal immigration law. We can't do that. We have to apprehend these dangerous criminals. We have convicted murderers and rapists and child molesters in cities across America, and we have Immigrations and Customs Enforcement for a reason. These agents, these officers are doing heroic work trying to keep our communities safe, and it's unconscionable to us that you would have Democrat mayors and governors trying to impede that work, encouraging their citizens to get in the way, and that's what's created these dangerous environments.
Realistic to work that out. How can you do that parliamentarily? How can you do that politically?
Well, it's up to the will of the people in the building, and I hope that they'll come forward again in good faith to work this out. Listen, they made a list of requests or demands last week. Leader Schumer made that public. And I will tell you that Tom Homan is in charge in Minnesota now, and he's already bringing about many of those changes. They are wanting to make sure that immigration enforcement is done safely and smartly and efficiently, and that's what you're going to get. It's going to be balanced. It's going to be a balanced approach. Of the demands that were made, the requests that were made, many of those are already being implemented. You notice that that they're going to have the body cameras. We put $20 million additional dollars in this legislation that they're holding up right now to pay for more body cameras. Secretary Noem came out yesterday, as you saw, and announced that this will be the new policy. These are good things. The roving patrols will be modified. There are a lot of things that I think were thoughtful suggestions that would have already been implemented by Mr. Homan and others who are in charge of all this. And so I think we can get to an agreement. I certainly hope that's true. And if they have any intention of trying to keep these other agencies of government closed, it will be a fool's errand. And remember, we did front load the funding for Immigration Customs Enforcement and CBP in the big beautiful bill. So they have enough funding to go for the next few years. So what they will be tying up if the Democrats choose to close the government is these very essential services for everything else: FEMA, Coast Guard, TSA, and other aspects of national security. So it's a very dangerous game that they're playing. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker. Members in the House support those changes, and do they need assurances like the SAVE Act attached to it?
Well, look, we are going to be fighting for the SAVE Act, and I'll tell you why this is so important. We passed it twice in the House, and we will pass it again. The SAVE Act just simply says you have to have verification of citizenship to register to vote. That's about a 90-10 issue on many of the polls in this country, and we're going to enhance it by what the president calls the Save America Act. And so it would be proof of citizenship to register to vote and voter ID, which is also about an 80 or 90% issue on the polling nationwide, depending on who you talk to. These are very important things to ensure that our elections are free and fair and safe. And that's a critical component of maintaining a constitutional republic. So this is a big priority for not just House Republicans, but for the American people. And we will continue to attach this to legislation and send it over. And it will be part of the discussion over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see how that shakes out. But I suspect that some of the changes, the procedural modifications with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, will be codified. I mean, they've said that they're willing to do some of this, and so we'll see how it comes out.
The Senate is able to filibuster to pass the SAVE Act?
I don't think we'll have to get rid of the filibuster to get these things done, and that's certainly our hope. Yes, ma'am.
Just to be clear, you're going to attach the SAVE Act to future DHS funding?
I'm not going to tell you in advance how those negotiations will go. There's a lot of discussions to be held, but I will tell you what I'm saying to you is that House Republicans have already passed the SAVE Act twice. We did it in the last Congress, did it in this Congress. We will continue to try to advance that because we believe that is critically important to the American people and to our election system.
Just a quick follow-up on elections. The president says that he wants Republicans to nationalize elections. Do you agree with him? And do you have confidence in how elections are conducted right now, heading into the midterm?
We have thoughtful debate about our election system every election cycle and sometimes in between. We know it's in our system. The states have been in charge of administering their elections. What you're hearing from the president is his frustration about the lack of some of the blue states, frankly, of enforcing these things and making sure that they are free and fair elections. We need constant improvement on that front. I don't know what the ultimate solution is going to be. I'm not going to get ahead of the negotiations here, but I think that is something that's going to be a continuing theme here. It's something that we'll continue to push, and we hope the governors will insist upon that same thing as well. In some of the states, like in California, for example, I mean, they hold the elections open for weeks after Election Day. That's just one thing that bothers so many people. We had 3 House Republican candidates who were ahead on Election Day in the last election cycle, and every time a new tranche of ballots came in, they just magically whittled away until their leads were lost. And no series of ballots that were counted after Election Day were our candidates ahead on any of those counts. It looks on its face to be fraudulent. Can I prove that? No, because it happened so far upstream, but we need more confidence in the American people in the election system, and it's essential, and everybody, no matter what party you're in, should agree with that. The mass mailing of paper ballots or mail-in ballots and all the other irregularities that have haunted us over the last couple of cycles, we need to tighten that up. Now, the red states have done a lot of good work in that front, but it's the blue states that I'm frankly concerned about. So we'll see how the law is modified and what's changed, but I hope we can get consensus to get that done. Yeah.
Pope Leo has cited Matthew 25:35 to critique Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. How would you respond to Pope Leo in Scripture?
So you want me to give you a theological dissertation? All right, I'll tell you what, I'll post it on my website later today, but let me give you a quick summary. Borders and walls are biblical. From the Old Testament to the New, God has allowed us to set up our civil societies and have separate nations. Immigration is not something that's frowned upon in Scripture. In fact, it's welcome. We're to welcome the sojourner and love our neighbor as ourselves. But what's also important in the Bible is that assimilation is expected and anticipated and proper. When someone comes into your country, comes into your nation, they do not have the right to change its laws or to change its society. They're expected to assimilate. We haven't had a lot of that going on. When people cite passages out of the Old Testament, they say, well, you're supposed to take care of the sojourner and the neighbor, treat them as yourself, welcome them in. Yes, but that is an admonition to individuals, not to the civil authorities. The civil authorities are given authority under Scripture to maintain order. Romans 12, you want to do this? Romans 13 says that the civil authorities are God's agents of wrath to bring punishment upon the wrongdoer. And it says if you do right, you have no fear of the civil authorities, but those civil authorities are necessary. It's a calling. It's a calling to maintain order in society, and we have not had that. When Biden and Harris opened the borders wide for 4 years, we had as many as 20 million illegals come across the country, and we all know many dangerous people, hardened criminals, child molesters, rapists, murderers, all the rest, terrorists who came into the country. We did not take care of our borders. Sovereign borders are biblical and good and right, and they're just, because it's not because we hate the people on the outside, it's because we love the people on the inside. We should love our neighbor as ourselves, as individuals, but as the civil authority and the government has to maintain the law. And that is biblical, and it's right, and it's just, and I'm happy to have this lengthy debate with anybody any time they want to, and I'll post on my X page the longer dissertation on that for you today, okay? Thank you all so much.
House Speaker Mike Johnson speaking there at the Capitol in Washington after the House voted to end the partial government shutdown. We'll watch for that to head to the president's desk and bring you that signing if we are able to see that on camera. We'll certainly bring it to you right here on Live Impact News on WCNC+. We'll be right back.
Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. All right, so we are digging into some documents, to some reports, and I don't want to read the subject line from our content partners in Greensboro, WFMY News. So the ACLU says documents list Greensboro facility as possible ICE detention, but the city of Greensboro says there's no current proposal. So Walker Lawson is following up on the story. We've been talking about the story since this morning, trying to parse out what is going on. What have you been able to find out?
Yeah, well, I'll first say it's the ACLU was able to obtain these documents after what they said was they had heard, of course, that there were going to be proposals, so they wanted to kind of get some more information to try to see what was going on, and so they. A lawsuit was filed by the ACLU and its affiliates in October after ICE failed to respond to a Freedom of Information Act request, which is what we as journalists all have the ability to do, is file these requests to get information from the government when it's not as easy to see. But these broad plans basically, it's a very heavily redacted document. There's little to no information really inside the document except for vague plans of 7 potential different locations. And even the ACLU said to me in my interview, it's so heavily redacted that it was kind of hard for even them, in a sense, to kind of figure things out. So they're obviously planning on trying to challenge the redactions. But yes, that is the case. The American Hebrew Academy in Greensboro, that's what these documents show, that they could be, that site could be used as a ICE detention center.
Were you able, I know you've been reaching out to almost everybody outside.
Thanks to you, though.
Yeah, we're working together. We're a team. Have you heard back from anybody else on this story?
Yeah, I mean, we talked to the ACLU and we spoke with Camino and as well as Siembra, sorry, I'm blanking on the name, Siembra NC.
Yeah.
We've reached out to so many different agencies today. Siembra NC kind of spoke about how this has concerned them, because obviously we reached out to our partners, content partners in Greensboro did. They reached out to the city of Greensboro. And Greensboro basically said they've had no plans submitted to them, and even if they did, there would be hurdles and challenges with fire code and things of that nature. But Siembra NC basically said that the fact that we're learning about this through FOIA documents is another example of the government not being as transparent as they feel that they should be, and not really showcasing or speaking even with the community, because they feel like, you know, this should be something the community would be involved in. What do they want to have around them? Do they want this around them? And then we also spoke to Camino, who said, you know, this kind of they understand the government has to do their job and that agents have to do their job, but when people in the Latino community hear about something like this, it's going to instill fear, and it's automatically going to cause a little bit of panic. And she kind of attributed she spoke more to the economic impact of what this could mean. A Latino family might be looking to move to North Carolina and then hear this news that they're looking at building not one in Greensboro, but 2, one near the coast from these plans. And they might think, okay, I'm not going to move there because, you know, they don't trust the process, or they're a little hesitant maybe to move. And so that has economic impacts as well.
Yeah, and just for context, Greensboro, if you're not familiar, only about an hour and a half away from Charlotte. So, a lot of eyes on this. Walker, I know you're busy, still working on your story. When can we catch your story tonight?
4 and 6. I'm making a video for you guys. They're at 5 also. So I know it's a big deal, and a lot of people want to know what this is, especially because it didn't come, you know, in front of Greensboro Council and get brought up as a vote. It just came in documents, and that's kind of the beauty, I guess, in reporting and being able to FOIA things. You're able to find out stuff like this.
All right, Walker Lawson, busy man today with a big story there. All right, let's. Do we want to go to break, James, or should we go to the White House? Let's go to the White House. So earlier today, not even an hour ago, we heard from Caroline Leavitt, press secretary for the White House. She answered questions outside of the White House. Let's take a listen in.
I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would disagree with the idea of requiring citizens of this country to present an ID before casting a ballot in a federal election, or frankly in any election, and that's something the president wants to see happen. So that's what he was referring to.
But to be clear, he does believe the state should oversee it.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
And just to follow up on that, he said specifically that they should take over elections in 15 states. Can you tell us what he meant by that, what 15 states he's referring to in terms of Republicans taking over elections?
Again, what I was just telling you is that with the passage of the SAVE Act, voter ID will be implemented across all 50 states. The president was referring to specific states in which we have seen a high degree of fraud. If you look at states like California, or if you look at New York City, for example, non-citizens are allowed to vote in elections in places like California and New York City. That just creates a system, an electoral system, that is absolutely ripe with fraud. And you cannot deny the fact that, unfortunately, there are millions of people who have questions about that, as does the president. He wants to make it right, and the SAVE Act is a solution to doing it. Daniel?
Carolyn, good to see you. The January ISM manufacturing PMI hit a score north of 52. It's the best score since August of 2022. What should that tell Americans about manufacturing activity possibly surging under the Trump administration?
Well, the president's tariffs are working, and his economic agenda is working. When you combine tariffs and reshoring American manufacturing and investments in this country, which the president has played a huge role in directly recruiting those investments from countries and companies all over the world to the United States, you're creating jobs. We've seen construction jobs have surged in the past few months. That's because those factories are being built right here in the United States, and we're putting Americans to work. So our manufacturing sector is obviously something the president cares a lot about. That's why he's so determined and dedicated to his tariff policy, which, as you all saw yesterday, the president struck another great trade deal with India. He spoke with Prime Minister Modi directly. They share a very good relationship. India committed to not only no longer purchasing Russian oil, but buying oil from the United States, also perhaps from Venezuela too, which we know will now have a direct benefit on the United States and the American people. And in addition to that, Prime Minister Modi committed to $500 billion of investments into the United States, including for transportation, for energy, and for agricultural products as well. So this is another great trade deal thanks to President Trump.
Why was Tulsi Gabbard involved in a domestic law enforcement search in Georgia?
Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and the security of our American elections. She's working directly alongside the FBI Director, Kash Patel. This is a coordinated whole-of-government effort to ensure that our elections, again, are fair and transparent moving forward. I don't see anything wrong with the President tasking a cabinet member to pursue an issue that most people want to see solved. Maybe you don't, but I know many Americans do want to make sure our elections are protected, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard is focused on doing.
Is there something specific that the president has concerns about that led him to ask the Director of National Intelligence to go down to Fulton County?
I just explained the president's concerns with voting in this country, and it's something that he wants to see solved for future elections, and I think that's something all Americans can get behind.
Has called President Petro drug dealer, thug, lunatic, and President Petro has called the American army to not pay attention to President Trump. Do you think President Trump had a hope that this relationship could be fixed?
I think the president invited President Petro and accepted that offer for him to meet President Petro, and the president spoke a few weeks ago. As you know, President Petro said he'd love to come to Washington. President Trump said, sure, come. So I think that speaks for itself, and again, I'm sure the president will provide a readout of that meeting.
Sean, given the recent news and what just happened, how much does this escalate tensions ahead of these critical talks that are happening with Witkoff?
Well, look, I just spoke with Special Envoy Witkoff, and these talks, as of right now, are still scheduled. President Trump is always wanting to pursue diplomacy first, but obviously it takes two to tango. You need a willing partner to achieve diplomacy, and that's something that Special Envoy Witkoff is intent on exploring and discussing. As always, though, of course, the president has a range of options on the table with respect to Iran. As commander-in-chief, I think they learned that quite well last year with the strike in Operation Midnight Hammer, which was wildly successful and obliterated their nuclear capabilities. But those talks will continue later this week as far as we're concerned right now.
President Trump was talking yesterday about how President Putin had agreed to a week-long halt on attacks on Ukraine because of the cold weather. But today we've seen that Russia has launched some of the heaviest attacks this month. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I spoke with the president about it this morning, and his reaction was unfortunately unsurprised. These are two countries who have been engaged in a very brutal war for several years, a war that would have never started if the president were still in office. It started because of the weakness and incompetence of the previous president, Joe Biden, and that's why the president continues so aggressively to pursue diplomacy to end this war. That's why Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in Abu Dhabi tomorrow for another round of trilateral talks. I would note the trilateral talks that took place last week or the week prior are historic by nature. Never before have all three of our countries really been able to sit down at the negotiating table to move the ball forward towards peace. So Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner and President Trump made the impossible possible with respect to peace in the Middle East, and I know they're looking to do the same with respect to the Russia-Ukraine war as well.
On Harvard, the president said yesterday he's now seeking $1 billion from Harvard. One, how do you arrive at that number? And two, he said he wants criminal, not just civil, charges against individuals at Harvard. Does he want to see Harvard officials arrested there criminally?
Look, I will let the president and also the Justice Department and those who will be pursuing that against Harvard speak on the specifics of that matter. But I know that the president wants to see a deal struck with Harvard that is appropriate and that ensures they are held responsible for the criminal behavior, the illegal behavior, the harassment and the targeting of Jewish American students on their campus that took place over the course of the last several years. This is something the administration has been working on over the course of the last year, and the president himself has been directly involved, as evidenced by that Truth Social statement as well.
What does President Trump want to see happen during this 2-week negotiation period for DHS funding? Is he confident that a deal will be reached? And what specifically is he willing to accept on some of the ICE and Border Patrol reforms that Democrats are asking for?
Well, look, President Trump will be the ultimate decider of any policy changes on anything, especially with respect to immigration enforcement. What I will tell you is the president is never going to waver in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and protecting the public safety of the American people, in his ardent support of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, who unfortunately the Democrat Party has made a decision to demonize. I heard Senator Schumer referring to them as Donald Trump's Nazi secret police force, I believe, were his words. I don't recall that same language being used when President Obama was in the White House and was deporting millions of illegal aliens from our country using this very same agency and these very same agents, who, by the way, have jobs because of the laws that were passed by Congress. So as for policy discussions that will take place, Congress will have those. The president will decide on those. You saw yesterday Secretary Noem announced that DHS agents on the ground in Minnesota will begin using and wearing body cams. That's something DHS is looking to roll out nationwide, assuming they have the funding for it. So that could be part of the discussion. I know Tom Homan has been on the ground in Minnesota. He's there again today for direct dialogue with state and local officials to move these conversations forward as well. And I think you'll be hearing more from Mr. Homan tomorrow on some of the progress that has been made. So look, we're willing obviously to have this dialogue and to talk and to listen, but we are not going to concede in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and delivering on the mandate the president was given by nearly 80 million Americans to deport illegal alien criminals from our country.
Venezuela, any preparations for a visit from Delcy Rodriguez from Venezuela, and your statements on the political prisoners situation in Venezuela?
Sure. I don't have a date for a visit at this time. I know it is something that has been discussed, but no firm plans at this point. As for the release of the political prisoners, the president and this entire White House, and I think the whole country, should be very pleased to see that. It's a commitment that Ms. Rodriguez made, and she has kept, and we expect her to continue to keep it.
His administration is still expecting the ICE agents during the Super Bowl. And what are the comments from President Donald Trump regarding what Bad Bunny said during the Grammy Awards, ICE out?
I have not spoken with ICE or the Department of Homeland Security or Secretary Noem with respect to enforcement at the Super Bowl, so I don't want to speak on a topic that I don't have knowledge on. I'm sorry, but I would defer you to them. I'm sorry?
On the statements of Bad Bunny saying ICE out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's very ironic and frankly sad to see celebrities who live in gated communities with private security, with millions of dollars to spend protecting themselves, trying to just demonize, law enforcement, public servants who work for the United States government to enforce our nation's laws. And you didn't hear this same type of uproar from celebrities in Hollywood when the previous administration allowed an invasion of our nation's borders and allowed innocent women and girls like Jocelyn Nungaray and Laken Riley to be killed and raped and murdered at the hands of people who should have never been in our country in the first place. And now you have law enforcement who are simply trying to do their jobs to remove violent predators like those who took the lives of innocent Americans. There was no uproar from Hollywood and the elitist crowd at the Grammys then, but there is now, and I think that speaks to the unfortunate irony that we're seeing in Hollywood. I'm sorry?
Go. President Trump approval ratings has went up in the Hispanic community since the Maduro's capture. What do you think about that? Because the legacy media said that the Hispanic community is scared about Trump policies.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, but what the president obviously did with respect to Venezuela was a great thing for all Americans, but especially Venezuelan Americans who fled Maduro's illegitimate regime because of the horrors of communism. And I think it's a good lesson for all Americans to learn. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt speaking a little bit earlier to reporters outside the White House. We have a new traffic crash to show you here on Live Impact News. This is the right lane of Interstate 85 just past Brookshire. You can see a disabled vehicle in the roadway there. Almost looks like the vehicle may be facing the wrong direction. We do have a DOT vehicle on scene blocking off that right lane so that motorists can't avoid the vehicle there as they make their way towards the interchange with Interstate 77. Check of Brad Panovich's weather impact forecast when we return right here on Live Impact News.
Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Snow still on the ground, rain in the forecast. Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich for a look at our upcoming forecast.
Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. We've got some rain on the way, but there's a lot of hubbub about maybe some snowflakes mixing in. I'll set the record straight. We'll tell you why this isn't going to be an impact at all, and even though we see some flakes, I'll show you where that's more likely, but more importantly, why it's important that we get some rain and above average temperatures, maybe even above freezing for about 2 days in a row. This could be crazy. So here's our setup. You could see we've got a system back to the west. There it is, coming in from the west, and it is all rain. There's a warm front coming in. So temperatures today are actually going to warm up into the 40s, even with cloud cover, with southwest winds. I'm looking at the current temperatures. We're hovering right above the freezing mark south, below north. Once we get above freezing today, in our area, we're going to stay there for 48 hours. So we got 48 hours of above freezing temperatures to melt everything. And that rain back to the southwest is going to be heading our way. So let's break this down. All right, so we're going to look at Futurecast short range rapid refresh. The good news today is, as I mentioned, we're actually going to get some much needed rainfall, which is going to be great for our area. This means the potential for seeing at least some rain to melt some of the snow and ice. So we'll go through today. It'd really be tonight that we start to see the moisture. So this is overnight tonight. Temperatures, I mean, it's going to be above freezing. It won't exactly be warm. You're probably talking mid to upper 30s. But you can see going into tonight and early Wednesday. So this is Wednesday morning. You see the rain. Again, heavier south and east, more so than back to the west. We go through Wednesday. This is all rain. Temperatures in the 40s. Again, not super warm, but enough that it's not frozen. As we go into Wednesday night into Thursday morning, you'll see on the backside a wave of low pressure is going to try to form on this front here. And on the backside, you've got the good old-fashioned cold air chasing the moisture. This is going to be kind of one of those races between the cold air and the moisture moving out. And you'll see that there is some snow on the backside of this. It may be a brief mix, rain, snow. Not going to mount to much. You'll see this is probably the worst case for our area. Maybe a flurry north, some rain. But it's really over here that I see the primary chance, because the low pressure will kind of get more mature and actually supply more moisture. So if we're going to see some accumulating snows out of this system, it's going to be to our east or northeast, not so much in the Charlotte area. Doesn't mean we couldn't see a few wet snowflakes, but again, the impacts will be close to zero because temperatures are going to be basically in the low 30s, above freezing. The ground's going to be wet. We're not looking at Arctic air like we have with our last system, or we've had the last couple of nights. So you can see that's like the worst right there. So 99% of this is rain, and it moves off to the east. Another way to look at this is looking at the Schref plumes. I love looking at this. So this is this morning. You can see the blue line is above freezing. We're above freezing all the way until Thursday morning right there. So that's a good sign. A lot of melting going on. What type of precipitation are we going to see? You can see the green is the rain chance is staying pretty high. At the very end, on Thursday morning, there's a brief chance, 8% chance of a brief wet snowflake, but that's about it, not amounting to anything. And when you start looking at some of the blend of models, you look at all the data. This is what the data shows for the blend here of all the guidance. You could see to the north, there's maybe a dusting, but right here, north of Raleigh, this area is the area that we possibly see something there. You can see around our area, there's a hint of maybe a few flakes, but again, you're looking at less than measurable in many locations. So just a flurry mixing in with the rain at the end, again, impacts close to zero for you. When we look at the probabilities, this is what the Weather Service puts out for the probabilities of seeing accumulation. You also see the same thing. Notice up here, I'll move the map over so you can see it. Expected snow amounts. You see a couple spots near trace flurries, but it's really over here where we see the impact in this area, north of Raleigh up towards Norfolk. So that's the area I would watch for some snow out of this. Overall, the impacts are relatively low, as I mentioned, because this is actually going to end up being a good thing for us. The rain is going to help melt the snow and ice. So we've got a 48-hour window from right now. Once the temperature gets above freezing at your location today, it will stay above freezing all the way until possibly Thursday morning. If we don't drop below freezing on Thursday morning, it probably won't be again until Friday morning. So there could be 3 days of above freezing temperatures. So we're going to be doing a lot of melting with a little bit of rain mixed in. We'll keep an eye on the flurry chance. Again, just because you see a flurry doesn't mean it really has an impact. It's essentially like rain in this case because of how warm it is. It's not accumulating. It's not freezing on contact. So we're pretty good. We can look at the impact graphics, which I love showing you these. This is the chance of minor impacts, not even major or moderate. Minor impacts will go into Thursday. And I'm going to stop this Thursday morning and I'll zoom in. You can see in Charlotte, the chance of a minor impact, which is just snow falling, is around 5%. But you look over here in eastern North Carolina, this is where we could see some snowfall. Again, that's the point that we're watching. Back towards us, this is going to be a non-event. So good news, melting snow and ice for the next 48 hours minimum, and some rain to help accelerate that process. So clean out the snow away from your downspouts, your gutters. Let this water run off because we want to get as much of it off the road surface as we can over the next 2 days.
All right, so make sure you hang with Brad at 6:30, live weather impact here on WCNC Plus with a full breakdown of the forecast. Also, it's going to break down this upcoming rain coming later this week. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Welcome to Impact News, y'all. Inside the Impact Studio on WCNC Plus, I'm Colin Mayfield, just taking over for Nick Sturdivant as he gets ready for the 4 o'clock show. We've been listening in to Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos speak on the Netflix Warner Brothers transaction. You've heard a lot about that takeover the last couple of months. There was a hostile bid from Paramount as well that a lot of shareholders had speaking out against. So let's listen into this as there's testimony going on Capitol Hill right now.
While continuing our previously planned separation of our news and sports television networks into a new company, Discovery Global. The iconic Warner Brothers studios have created some of the country's most recognizable television and film productions, from Citizen Kane to Minecraft. Just last month, our films received 30 Academy Award nominations, tying our own record for the most nominations set 2 decades ago. Discovery grew largely from the cable revolution of the 1980s, delivering a variety of content on cable networks such as the Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, Food Network, and HGTV. As the media landscape evolved over the past several decades, Discovery expanded its focus on digital media, delivering high-quality content across a range of platforms in addition to cable. In 2022, Discovery merged with Warner Media, which was then being spun off from AT&T to create Warner Brothers Discovery. This history exemplifies the dramatic and dynamic changes we have experienced in the entertainment landscape over the past 100 years. Today, those changes are only accelerating as consumers access video content through numerous paid and ad-supported services. Consumers are experiencing a flood of options, including expanded social media platforms, digital and interactive games, and dozens of other entertainment options that compete for consumers' interest and attention. This increasingly complicated media landscape has also resulted in considerable consumer frustration. The abundance of streaming options has made it more challenging for consumers to find the content they want. Advertising revenue is also less stable due to marketplace changes such as the move to on-demand streaming services and the rise of social media. At Warner Brothers Discovery, we have continuously sought to innovate and respond to the changing marketplace. The 2022 merger gave us the ability to identify and align common business strategies. We found our alignment with our combined collection of sports, news, and other cable networks. And we saw a different collection of business opportunities with our studios and streaming business. We concluded that the company would be best served by separating the studios and streaming division from news, sports, and entertainment networks such as CNN, TBS, and HGTV. Last summer, we announced plans to split into 2 companies, Warner Brothers and Discovery Global. The separation strategy was designed to position each company for long-term success by enhancing the strategic flexibility and sharpening the competitive focus of each entity. That decision prompted others in the industry to look anew at the company and our world-class collection of media franchises, brands, and properties. Last fall, we began to receive various outreach and offers, including most significantly from Paramount Skydance and Netflix. Our board responded with a full review of the company's strategic options. Paramount Skydance, Netflix, and another company made a variety of offers that our board considered carefully and fully. Ultimately, after careful evaluation of the competing offers, our board unanimously determined that Netflix's offer was and remains the best opportunity for our company. In this proposal, we saw a compelling and unique opportunity to combine our existing separation strategy with the strengths of Netflix. This vertical merger permits Netflix to expand its nascent movie and television production capabilities with the addition of the Warner Brothers studio assets. It gives our production capabilities access to Netflix's popular and consumer-friendly streaming and distribution platform. The merger also permits us to continue our planned separation of the global networks business, which we continue to believe is in the best long-term interests of the company. At the same time, the board continues to review and evaluate additional offers as they have been received to determine if any are superior to the Netflix offer, consistent with the board's obligations under law. We are excited about the future of the combined company with Netflix, and we look forward to providing consumers with thrilling and entertaining content across all of our storied media properties for many years to come. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much. All right, we're now going to proceed to questions. Each senator will have 5 minutes to ask questions per round, and we'll alternate between Republicans and Democrats in order of seniority subject to the early bird rule. And as I mentioned earlier, Ranking Member Durbin has had a conflict, so when he arrives, we'll hope to hear his opening statement as well. Mr. Sarandos, why don't we start with you, if that's all right? Now, Netflix, under current conditions, that is pre-merger status quo Netflix, it produces and distributes its own scripted long-form full-length feature films, TV shows, documentaries, and series, correct?
Thank you, Senator Lee. Yes, it is correct. We do produce, it is a small portion of our title offering.
But it's part of your library.
Part of our library, yes.
In fact, it plans to invest roughly $20 billion annually, separate and apart from the merger, in order to increase production, adding to its portfolio. Is that right?
Production and licensing, correct,
Yes.
sir, yes.
So if Netflix already produces content and plans to increase production, increase that investment on new production, regardless of the merger, tell me why you want to make this acquisition with a competing content producer and a competing streaming platform.
Well, today, Warner Brothers is both a competitor and a supplier, and our history, the reason I walked through that little history in the opening was that our history and my own professional history has been about adding more and more value to consumers.
Right.
And you do that by adding more choice. And to do that, it requires a great deal of volume of production and a volume of licensing, which we do today. I would say, too...
By supplier, you're referring to the fact that they, through licensing arrangements, you already...
Correct. We license television series.
Air,
and film
well, you
from
don't really air,
various-
you stream some of their content.
Correct. In movies in various windows, and in original series and licensed series as well.
Now, YouTube does not invest in producing original content, at least not in the same order of magnitude, not anywhere near what Netflix does. Is that right?
I can't speak to their specific economic impact. I know that they do not share the risk with the creators in doing that. They certainly step up, and we compete with them for things like that Academy Award deal, certainly for the NFL football games they recently did with the NFL game in Brazil. So yes, they do spend a great deal of money on content.
Now, YouTube...
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We'll come back with more news here on WCNC Plus. See you in 2 minutes. Welcome back here on WCNC Plus, everyone. We're going to get now to Tyler Robinson, the man who's accused of killing political activist and founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, making another in-person court appearance in Utah. This is happening live right now. Let's go to this as the judge speaks in real time.
And do you understand the guidelines as they relate to your responsibilities today, including the additional guidance regarding counter position at council table and the filming of attorneys and witnesses that I just put on the record that was not in the decorum order?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Do you need any additional time to review the order or to reposition the camera to ensure full compliance?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Do you anticipate any difficulty complying with the order or today's guidance?
No.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dimick.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, as I just asked questions of the pool camera operator, Mr. Dimick, I'll turn to counsel. Do you wish to weigh in on what the court has just done?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Richard Novak for Mr. Robinson. May I speak from here?
Yes, Mr. Novak.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. We appreciate that the court, on its own accord, moved the videographer. I don't know where the still photographer is, but we continue to be concerned that any video images of Mr. Robinson during court proceedings, close-up images of Mr. Robinson during court proceedings, interfere with his right to a fair trial. I think I heard everything the court said about the videographer, but the still photographer is still seated in the same place where they were last week, and we would ask the court to order the still photographer not to take any photographs of Mr. Robinson's face or person during the hearing, in the same way that the videographer has now been ordered to be focused on the court, the witness, if somebody's testifying, counsel at the lectern, or generally the people seated at counsel, what the court referred to as counsel table. We do not want to see still images again of Mr. Robinson's face in the media with more speculation about meaning of his facial expressions or the lack thereof. And so we really appreciate what the court did on its own, sua sponte, I guess we would say. But we have the same concerns about the still photographer.
All right, and before I address that, any questions as it relates to Mr. Dimick? I want to excuse him to go back. Standing in front of the court is no fun, and I recognize that.
I was just trying to keep him up there as long as possible.
I see. All right, Mr. Dimick, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, before I address that, I'll allow the parties to be heard before I address what Mr. Novak has brought up as it relates to the still photographer. To the state.
All right, everyone. Getting some bad audio, so we're going to go back to Capitol Hill right now, where the next Netflix CEO is continuing to testify in front of Congress.
That will be the case here. That is, as a result of this merger, should we expect there'll be a round of layoffs, and how large? Should we expect consumer prices to go up? And if not, why should we think this will be the exception?
Thank you, Senator. No, I think the answer is no in both cases. One of the reasons that the Netflix offer appealed to us so much at Warner Brothers Discovery is, to Mr. Sarandos's point, that they don't have the type of film studio and film distribution infrastructure that we do today. They don't have the type of television studio that we do today. And we believe, based on our discussions with them in the negotiation process, that they're not only going to keep those operations intact, in fact, they're going to invest in those operations and invest in continued production, including on our lots in Burbank and elsewhere. Similarly, on the consumer side, as Mr. Sarandos said, 80% of the HBO Max subscribers today already get Netflix. Now, with this transaction, Netflix will have the opportunity to offer those two services together at a discount. In addition, they'll have the opportunity to take our content and the HBO Max content and put it on the Netflix platform, which they've invested in over 20 years. It is the best technology platform available to consumers. It is superior to the platform we have. I think that, too, will be very pro-consumer.
And Mr. Sarandos, let me ask you about a couple of things, and I know we discussed part of this already, but...
Good to see you again.
Good to see you, too. Share with us your thoughts on the impact on the theater industry.
Yeah.
I happen to be one of those people who loves to go see movies in the theater and be surrounded by other people experiencing the same thing. There was a lot of concern that given the business model you've had to date, that theatrical exhibitions will be cut down from 45 days or whatever they generally are, the industry standard, down to a lot less, maybe 17. How long do you expect theatrical exhibition to be? How will that change or not change? And also, in terms of jobs, for many of the other studios, we've seen a growth since the pandemic in production at home. Netflix has been a bit of an outlier, though, where we've seen more production move overseas. Now, I know you're building a new facility in New Jersey, but what accounts for the production shift, the greater production shift we see of Netflix to production overseas, and how do you think that'll be affected by this?
Well, thank you for asking, Senator. And let me work backwards on the question. We have some local production that happens overseas. I mean, we have some local production that happens overseas, meaning we have a service in South Korea and we produce some Korean content for the South Korean market in local language, local cast, local producers, that kind of producing. That happens separate and aside from this. Almost all of the vast majority of our content spend is produced in the United States. There's been many studios, including Disney, just recently moved all the Avenger movies to London. By way of example, there's production incentives that draw production away. What I've been doing for the last several years is working with the state of New Jersey to create an incentive that competes with that UK incentive and brings production home. We're building that big studio in New Jersey for that. Since that incentive passed, we had 11 projects. 7 of them were slated to go to the UK, pulled back into New Jersey. So we are leading production in the United States and intend to keep growing it. As Bruce said, you know, the Warner Brothers slate of movies are still getting made. We're making them, we're going to operate Warner Brothers Studio largely as it is today, including releasing the movies in the theater with the traditional 45-day window. Now, I know I've earned some skepticism over the years on this because I was talking a lot about Netflix business model, which was different from that. We didn't own a theatrical distributor before, we do now, and a great one. They did $4 billion in box office last year. So that's all baked into the price of this company that we're looking at, and we want to keep that going and invest further in that. So this will continue to push up those jobs that we talked about and push up that production primarily in the U.S. So this will keep the theater business intact. This will definitely keep production in the U.S. growing. I think what we've done in New Jersey is going to change the course of production in the U.S. completely, and I think other states will see the value of that as well.
Well, this gives me a perfect final opportunity to do a little self-promotion, Mr. Chairman. I have a bill that would provide a film tax credit analogous to what's been driving film production overseas, that's offered in other countries, and would welcome anyone who would like to work together.
Greatly support you on that, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Shipp. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling this hearing. Welcome to the witnesses. Mr. Sarandos, if I could just start with you, let's continue to talk a little bit about the labor impacts here, if we could. How many U.S.-based employees does Netflix currently employ, do you know?
About 10,000.
Yeah, what about in production roles?
Well, it's a fluid number, but we've had about 155,000 production jobs
about now
on our originals. At any given time, I don't know the number exactly, sir. I can follow back with your staff, though.
Warner Brothers, how many U.S. production jobs?
I don't have the exact number, but it would be, I would think, in the 8,000 range.
Okay. Here's my question. If this merger goes through, what's your projection about the amount of domestic production, say 2 years from now? Is it going to be static? Is it going to decline?
It's going to. Our production is going to increase.
Domestic production.
Domestic production.
Employment.
Is going to increase. Most of our production is domestic, and it will continue to increase. We've recently forecast our content spend, independent of this deal, to grow to $20 billion. And that's a combination of licensing, producing, Now, those licensing dollars compel production as well. That's why it's hard to get an exact number.
Let me show you the data here about U.S. production recently.
Yeah.
It's the red line here starting from in 2021. You can see it is pretty much straight downward. There's been massive shift in production, as I think as Senator Schiff was alluding to just a moment ago, massive shift in production overseas to other foreign jurisdictions, leaving the United States. So will you commit to increasing domestic United States production and domestic United States production jobs? Did I hear you just say you would?
Senator Hawley, absolutely. It's in our business plan. It's in our long-term operating DNA. I will point out, sir, respectfully, that chart is Los Angeles.
Yeah, but it is Los Angeles, but if you look at the data, it is reflective. This reflects all of U.S. production. U.S. production is not going up, right?
But some of these jobs have moved.
It's going
Some of these
down.
jobs have moved to
yeah, but the overall numbers are going down, and this is exactly the concern of labor. And without objection, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into a statement for the record from the Teamsters, who have major concerns about this deal, as does, frankly, pretty much every segment of labor, Mr. Sarandos. And what they all say is they're worried that you're going to cut residuals, which is effectively payments. You're going to cut production jobs. So let's just go through a few commitments here. Will you commit to using union labor for all domestic shoots?
We do use union labor.
Will you commit to using it in the future for all of your domestic shoots if this deal goes through?
Senator Hawley, we do use, this is the most unionized industry in America, and we use union labor on all our production.
And you're going to going forward. I'm looking for a commitment.
You have my commitment.
Will you commit to a 45-day or longer theatrical release window for major Warner Brothers films?
Senator Hawley, I just said that I would do that under oath, so yes.
Good. And will you commit to fairly compensating your workers in the industry with residual payments?
Well, our top-of-market payment has been Netflix's business philosophy since we started operating over 25 years
listen,
ago.
What you have been routinely accused of compressing and reducing residuals is one of the biggest objections to labor to this deal. So let's see if you can lay that to rest today. Will you commit to full residuals?
Senator Hawley, I would like to tell you this is a very complicated answer because we prepay.
That's usually on the way to no. That's usually a way of saying no. So I'm looking for yes.
Senator Hawley, I understand this is not a yes or no answer.
It kind of is, though.
It kind of isn't because, and we were going to sit down with the unions.
You're disappointing me.
Starting in the next few days, sir, we're sitting down with the unions for new contract talks that start actually in 3 days.
That's a complicated, long no. I would really hope it would be yes.
Okay. Are you asking me to commit to residuals in the traditional form? Because I don't think that applies in many cases. That's why I'm getting there.
All right. Well, I think you've got some work to do on that, Mr. Sarandos, and I would hope that you'd reconsider your position. Before my time expires, I want to ask you about something else related to children. Why is it that so much of Netflix content for children promotes a transgender ideology? Almost half of your content for children, I'm talking about minor children now, I'm not talking about teenagers, minor children, promotes a transgender ideology agenda. I was just looking at the data here from your various series. And what concerns me is just 2 days ago, a jury in New York awarded a former transitioner $2 million because she said that her psychologists and others pressured her into, they pushed on her an ideology that proved to be extremely detrimental. I'm sure you know that in the UK, the National Health Service in the UK has said that they're not going to perform transgender surgeries or any longer so-called gender-affirming care for minors, including in counseling, because it is so incredibly detrimental. Our own HHS has come forward with similar findings this past year, yet if you turn on Netflix, you'll find that an enormous amount, and I say this as a parent with 3 young children, an enormous amount of your children's programming has this ideology and agenda in it. Is this an advocacy position for Netflix? Is this an ideological commitment you have? I mean, why is this?
Senator Hawley, Netflix has no political agenda of any kind. I would tell you that.
Well, then why is your children's program so full of this highly sexualized, highly controversial agenda? I don't understand it. It seems strange to me.
Respectfully, sir, it's because it's inaccurate. We have millions of hours of children's programming.
You're saying it's not there. You don't have trans. You don't feature trans characters, trans storylines, trans themes. It's not in your programming.
I'm saying we feature a wide variety of stories and programs to meet a wide variety of people's tastes.
Why is almost half of it? Why does almost half of your children's program feature this highly controversial, highly sexualized material? That just seems strange to me. It can't possibly be a reflection of the population.
Senator Hawley, I don't have any idea where that number would come from or what that would be. I don't believe that's been your personal experience, but I can't speak to that.
Well, what do you mean you don't think it's been my personal
I don't-
experience? You don't think that I monitor what my children watch on your... Here's what I tell you what my personal experience is since you bring it up. My personal experience is that my 3 children, I can't let them watch anything they want on Netflix. I can't let them watch anything on Netflix unless I preview it, because I don't have confidence in what's on your platform. I don't know what they're going to encounter, and I tell you what, I don't want my kids being pushed an agenda about their sexuality or gender identity when I have not had the opportunity first to discuss it with them and to form them in that. And I, frankly, on behalf of parents around the country, it offends me that Netflix is pushing this content at parents in what seems to be a very coordinated, thought-through, planned-out agenda in a way that, frankly, I think undermines parents, certainly undermines me and my wife. We have to watch every show beforehand before we can let our kids watch it. Now, I don't know. That seems pretty concerning to me. I know you make a gob of money on it, and maybe that's the answer. But it just seems to me that it's a disservice to the parents of this country, particularly given what's happening with our youth on this subject.
So if I may answer, like I said, we have millions of hours of content on Netflix at any given time. We have state-of-the-art tools for you to manage those choices for your children and to block any title that you might be offended by for any reason. So we are parents at Netflix as well. We share all your concerns about raising kids and also the ability to raise them as you see fit in your household and anyone else's household as well.
My concern is that you don't share my values or those of many other American parents, and you want the United States government to allow you to become one of the largest, if not the largest, streaming monopolist in the world. I think we ought to be concerned about what content you're promoting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Booker would be next. He is deferred to Senator Welsh.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, guys, while we're switching testimony from, or at least from questions from senator to senator, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be back after this. Everyone, thank you for coming back here inside the Impact Studio. We're going to go back to Mr. Ted Sarandos giving testimony in front of Capitol Hill right now.
Very common in the business. I'm sure Bruce could talk to you about how CNN has bid against HBO for documentaries at Sundance Film Festival. Happens all the time. Everyone is focused on doing best by the consumer.
Okay.
And the way we win is to get the best product for the consumer.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Campbell. What I understand is that the Writers Guild of America, after the Warner Brothers Discovery merger in 2022, the merged firm canceled and wrote off about $2 billion in content. That's true, right?
After the merger, there was a significant write-off. That merger included a significant amount of debt being put on the combined company, so at least initially we had some meaningful financial considerations. Since that time, we've invested significantly in content, and our content investment has grown every year.
This is really the question that I need to be answered. I think it's incredibly important that we have more content, not less. I think it's incredibly important that we have creators and writers and producers having an opportunity to get their story to us, to try to get the benefit of stories that are told to America about our own experience. And it's just hard for me to understand how, if there are fewer buyers, where there is less opportunity for competition, it's going to result in more content. You're telling me I'm wrong?
No, we know as a successful studio, both on the television and film side, the way you're successful is by convincing the creative community that if you come to your studio, you're going to get a fair shake. And as Ted has...
there's something wonderful in the culture of a good company, right? And Warner Brothers has done extraordinary things, but it's really, as I understood it, been really committed to movies and creating incredible movies. Netflix is astonishing in what it's done out of nothing. It creates streaming, which is very, very popular. All of us use it. But those, if you're going to be in charge of Warner Brothers, you'd like to say that nothing will change. But don't we usually hear that anytime there's a big merger, that nothing will change and it'll all be better? So prove it.
Senator Welch, I'd like to explain that because, like I said earlier today, most media mergers have fared poorly. I agree. Mostly because one of two reasons. Either you have the Noah's Ark problem, you bought a company that has the exact same sets of assets that you do, so that's all you do is cut everything in half and look for the profit, squeeze it out. That's not what we're doing. We don't have any of these assets that we're buying from Warner Brothers. The other problem usually is a company that doesn't have particular expertise in that business, and they wind up just sucking cash out instead of putting cash in. We have a particular expertise in this business, and we have a strong, healthy balance sheet to keep investing in this business. Now, it is different from previous media mergers, I know that. But I will tell you, I've been at Netflix for over 25 years. We have done, every year we've been successful by doing things differently. And this media merger will be different than any of the others because we actually need these people. We need those movies. We need those series. So we're going to keep them all operating, and I want them to compete with one another, just as if we didn't own them. And it's very common that the teams inside of Netflix compete for the same project all the time.
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Welch. Senator Spread.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sarandos, you are currently the co-CEO of Netflix, is that correct?
That is correct, sir. Yes.
Okay. And until recently, you were the chief content officer, is that correct?
It's been a couple of years now, yeah, but yes.
Okay. Do you think Netflix is a powerful company?
We're a successful company.
Okay. I think it's pretty powerful. That's probably why we're here today, right, to judge whether or not it becomes anti-competitive in some particular way because of the power that it wields. You just said a moment ago that Netflix does not have a political agenda. Do you think Netflix is a politically biased company?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Would it surprise you if I told you that, what percentage of donations from Netflix employees and other folks affiliated with Netflix go to Republicans versus Democrats, do you think?
I saw a number published a while ago. It's very high Democrat.
Like 99%?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. That seems pretty high. Do you think that indicates any kind of bias by the company?
Sir, Netflix doesn't have a political giving arm. It does not have, we don't have an active PAC. We don't influence our employees to do anything, and our employees can support issues and candidates at their will.
Okay. On June 20th, 2020, on its X page, Netflix posted a video titled, quote, "To my white friends, guilt, shame, embarrassment," end quote, and saying, quote, "We need to do everything in our power to amplify that message." Do you stand by that statement?
I have no recall of that statement at all.
Okay, I just read it to you. Do you have an opinion about it?
I don't have any idea what context it's in or anything. It sounds,
okay. In the wake of the George Floyd riots on June 20th, Netflix posted on its page, "To my white friends, guilt, shame, embarrassment." What does that mean?
I think that is an uncharacteristic post that I'm deeply regret if that got posted that way.
Okay, well, it did. Netflix also said on May 30th, to be silent is to be complicit. I was just reading you some things that Netflix posted at the time. So you don't stand by that statement then?
As I said, sir, we have no political agenda. Posting something like that would be quite political, but
right. I would agree.
Yes,
I would agree
and I would say, I hope that wouldn't happen again.
Okay. Netflix also said on June 10th, 2020, that to implement the BLM, the Black Lives Matter agenda, Netflix understood, quote, that our commitment to true systemic change will take time. Do you still think that takes time? Are you still actively engaged in this effort?
Again, sir, we're not engaged in political efforts like that.
Okay. Any longer? You're not. You were, but you're not now.
I can't think of a period of time.
Okay.
I think of the time you're talking about was quite a volatile time for many companies.
I think a lot of people said things they regret then. I'm just trying to figure out if they actually regret it or not. I'm not going to get into your quotes on DEI, but it seems that both you and Netflix both have made a habit of promoting DEI and wokeness. I'll just give a few examples. Netflix content is synonymous for the modern phenomenon of race swapping, both historical and real and fictional characters. Just a few examples. Netflix made Black Vikings. Netflix changed Cleopatra from Macedonian to black. Achilles changed from Greek to black. Netflix overtly sexualizes children in its Cuties film related to preteen girls. You mentioned earlier that you can block for titles. I'm not sure blocking the word cuties would shield kids from the over-sexualized content in Cuties, so I'm not sure that's sufficient enough. Netflix continues to push sexual and gender theory on kids, and maybe this is what was being referred to earlier. 41% of G-rated, kid-approved series contain LGBTQIA+ content. You are the co-CEO, you were the chief content officer until recently. Yes or no, does Netflix stand by its content production decisions?
Senator Schmidt, we have a great deal of programming on Netflix for all left, right, and center. We have state-of-the-art tools for parents to manage what their kids see on Netflix. You can block anything. What you just described is exactly how it works. You block that title. No.
But why would I block Cuties? What would, if a G-rated movie came out called Cuties, why would I have any belief as a parent that it would be related to over-sexualized kids?
That film you're speaking of is a MA-rated adult movie for adults, not for kids. And the larger point, sir, is that of all the American values that we all share, and I understand parenthood is hard, I understand it's a difficult world that we all navigate, but the one we value a lot is the First Amendment. A lot of that is freedom of speech. And,
I get it.
What I want to do is give creators a place to tell their stories and parents a place to control.
I have no problem with a wide variety of content. That's not the issue. This is America. But I guess the point I'm making is that your company has made overtly political statements, has moved an agenda of DEI. You have Susan Rice on your board, the founder of sort of Barack Obama's DEI agenda. 99% of your employees contribute to Democrats to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Your content's over-sexualized for kids. You're engaged in this very woke programming, overwhelmingly. You do have some other options, but overwhelmingly. So the question before this committee, and you come before Congress, why in the world would we give a seal of approval or a thumbs up to make you the largest behemoth on the planet related to content? It seems as though you have engaged in creating not only a monopoly of content potentially, but the wokest content in the history of the world. So forgive me if I'm a little concerned, not only as a parent, but also that somebody believes that we ought to have a wide variety of content options. There are some, but the overwhelming majority of your stuff right now is overwhelmingly woke. And it's not reflective of what the American people want to see.
So respectfully, if you ask a Netflix member today, or a consumer today generally, how they view Netflix, I think that a proof point that we might be doing the right thing is they talk about Netflix in the exact same terms as they talk about the country. About 40% conservative, about 40% liberal, and about 20% don't know. You can look for and you can search for a character, an image.
But that's not what it is. Those are not the statistics I gave you.
I don't know what those statistics
are. 40% of your content for G-rated stuff has LGBTQIA themes.
So I respectfully don't know how they.
We're happy to follow up, and I'd love to get a response.
I'd love to engage with your staff to figure out how they.
I'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schmidt. Senator Booker, you're next.
I'm getting back to the subject of antitrust.
Thank you.
I guess I just want to start with asking for unanimous consent. Maybe, Mr. Reynolds, you and I can talk about it. I just want to enter into the record statements and letters from stakeholders in the entertainment industry, from a lot of respected groups that believe they'd be harmed by this merger, and they include Cinema United, the largest trade organization in the world representing exhibitors and the owners of movie theaters, a statement from the Future Film Coalition, a national alliance representing filmmakers, producers, distributors, and other impacted workers, a letter from the National Hispanic Media Coalition, Committee for the First Amendment, Writers Guild of America West, and other orgs that are opposed to this Warner Brothers acquisition by either Netflix or Paramount, and a letter from the International Documentary Association opposing any consolidation between major studios in Hollywood, as well, finally, as a letter from the American Economic Liberties Project urging the state attorneys general to block the proposed anti-competitive Netflix Warner Brothers Discovery transition. Chairman, can I introduce these to the record?
It'll be admitted to the record without objection.
And I guess my first question would be, why such a universal set of concerns, if not fears, that organizations who represent theater companies, who represent artists, who represent producers and directors, it seems pretty universal to me that people have a level of sophistication more than any senators about your industry seem to be really concerned. Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I would have to start, Senator, with the fact that the industry has been under attack for 5 years now. The pandemic, a prolonged strike, production downturn for companies trying to squeeze more profits out of their businesses. Now, we've not been doing that. And we got through the strikes, and we got through the pandemic, and keep producing and keep growing. But anytime there's change, the parties that you just discussed get nervous, and rightfully so. They need to know that people are looking out for them, and we are looking out for them. I mentioned in the theaters, I have been asked to give a blood oath about the 45-day window. I think giving my testimony to you under oath is good enough.
And I've known you personally for a long time, and to be a person of integrity. But I've heard more companies come before this body and make promises pre-merger that so many of them don't follow up. So let me just
I would also add, Senator, if you don't mind, we have a long operating history of operating the way we do. So I think we could point to our track record of expansion and growth and more and adding more value to consumers.
So if I may ask a direct question, then will this be a fully exclusive 45-day theatrical window?
Fully exclusive to theaters, yes.
And will this be self-enforced? In other words, if you fall short of that?
That is the industry. It is the industry standard for self-enforcement. However, routinely, movies that underperform, the window moves a little bit. And Superman was a little shorter window, and Sinners was a little longer window, but they still could refer to it as a 45-day window.
And so I guess the trend right now, though, is away from the theater experience. We are seeing a crisis of community in general in America. Theaters used to be, along with other great American sort of institutional experiences that brought people together across backgrounds, sitting in a theater. You and I both grew up with that in a way that I think is a cherished reality. But unfortunately, we're seeing market forces which control companies that are beholden to shareholder profits. We seem to have elevated that form of capitalism when companies in the past used to have many different stakeholders. But you all are a company that's beholden to your shareholders, and doesn't that mean that the forces that are moving against theaters, why we're seeing so many closures of theaters, would be affecting your decisions as well?
No, actually, no. And in fact, now that we are in the theatrical business, we want to win in the theatrical business. We want to make movies that people care enough to go out and see. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, we've done things like we put the finale of Stranger Things in theaters around the country the weekend it came on Netflix, and thousands of people, thousands of sold-out shows, revitalized the theater business for what was otherwise going to be a soft weekend. We've done it in the past with these events. We've released our movies with the independent theater owners over the years all the time. And I think now that this is going to be part of our business, we're going to treat it as importantly as every other part of our business and win. And you do that by making movies that people care about and go out to do. I think Warner Brothers did an exceptional job of that this year. And they did $4 billion at the box office, which is one of the reasons why this company costs so much to buy. So we want to keep that going and actually improve and build on it.
And so one of the last things I want to ask in this round is that theater experience is something we're losing, this force of market forces that seem to be undermining the things that create community and connection. Another one is obviously sports. This summer, the FIFA Men's World Cup will culminate in Jersey, which I'm really proud of, as you can imagine. But next year, the women's national team, which is our most successful soccer in America, sorry fellas, but it really is, they're going to head to Brazil to compete in the FIFA Women's World Cup. Their matches, however, will only be available to watch behind a digital paywall, as Netflix acquired the exclusive U.S. and Canadian broadcasting rights for the tournament. How are you going to ensure that households can really afford what to me is, in terms of my national pride, not to mention the kind of universal power that sports has created in terms of just connecting Americans. It's so central to American culture. What can you do about that? What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, well, we don't control the rights to those. As you know, we compete with other folks, all those folks I talked about earlier, for those rights. And I do think Netflix is a very affordable option for households. You can see by our large household penetration that people can afford Netflix, and we add a great deal of value to them. I know we keep talking about price, but I think it's impossible to talk about price without value. And a consumer watching Netflix spends 35 cents an hour to watch Netflix. 35 cents an hour. Just to put that in perspective, Paramount Plus is over 90 cents an hour. So I think when people talk about affordability, they're talking about, what do I get for my money? And I think Netflix has done a great job of keeping that down for the American consumers and for consumers around the world.
And so, finally, and again, you're somebody I know, so I have extraordinary integrity, I know that you have, but the reality is there seems to be everybody that I talk to that are on the artist side are seeing these trends as a way that is moving against the artist. And with your capacity.
While Senator Booker speaks, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break, folks. We'll be back right after this here on WCNC Plus. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to go back to this hearing right now, this court appearance from Provo, Utah, on the man accused of killing political activist Charlie Kirk. Let's go to this live right now.
If I have my alphabet correct. Yes. And if I may pass one up to the court, I will, if the court needs that.
No, feel free to approach Mr. Gray and present Exhibit
All right, thank
I.
you. Mr. Gray, I'm handing you something that's been marked as Exhibit I for identification only. Oh, I'm sorry, of course. Have you seen this document before?
I've seen it, yes.
All right.
I mean, there's a lot more than just conflict in our best practices.
Absolutely, but we're just
Yeah.
going to talk about that, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so what I'd like to do is turn your attention to page 2 of that document, which has a whole section addressing conflicts of interest. Would you agree with me that it starts in the middle of page 2?
Yes.
All right. And you see what I'll refer to as General Standard 1.30, conflict avoidance.
Yes.
All right, could you just read that aloud for the record, please?
A prosecutor should not hold an interest or engage in activities that conflict, have a significant potential to conflict, or are likely to create a reasonable appearance of conflict with the duties and responsibilities of the prosecutor's office.
All right. What do you take to mean a reasonable appearance of conflict?
There has to be a real actual conflict, that there could be actually an appearance of that conflict.
And that would be in the views of the public, right?
That would be based on Supreme Court case law and case law generally.
But it's an appearance, what I'm asking you is, would you agree with me that there's an appearance to the public?
Objection. This calls for a legal conclusion, Your Honor.
Mr. Novak.
Well, the witness testified that he's been aware of conflict principles for 25 years. So I think he should respond to that question.
I think this is a good argument to have with the court after the evidence has been presented, whether or not there's an appearance of a conflict, what that means, but I don't think the witness's opinion about it is evidence.
Thank you. I'm going to sustain the objection. Mr. Novak.
Understood. Mr. Gray, why don't you turn to page 3, and that would be standard toward the bottom. (1-3.3C). Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, could you read 1-3.3C aloud for the record?
If a prosecutor believes that public perception of the integrity of the prosecutor's office and public confidence in the handling of the case would negatively be impacted by a potential or alleged conflict of interest, the prosecutor should consider recusal.
All right, Mr. Gray, I want to ask you some questions about the decision to file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty against Mr. Robinson and the fact, which is beyond dispute, that a adult child of a member of the prosecution team was present at the shooting of Mr. Kirk, all right? You state in your opposition, well, let me back up. You testified on January 16th that you are the one who drafted the opposition to the motion to disqualify, correct?
Yes.
All right. So even though there's no affidavit by you, you stand by the contents?
Yeah, I said to the extent that we could either proffer that information or testify, and here I am.
Okay. So my first question is there a formal written policy or guidelines or procedure, I don't want you to get hung up on my nouns, for when your office decides to seek or not seek the death penalty in a case?
Anytime that it's an aggravated murder case, there's a potential for that.
Okay, so I understand that because that's what the statute says.
That's right.
But my question is there a policy, a procedure, a protocol, something in writing?
No.
Okay. And is it your view that it's your decision alone because you're the elected county attorney?
Yes.
Okay. And in this case, Did you discuss that question, whether the state should seek the death penalty, with your team before that decision was made?
Yes.
And did that conversation include the adult prosecutor whose child is the adult student at UVU we're talking about?
No.
Are you saying that that prosecutor was specifically excluded?
No, maybe I misunderstood your question.
Okay.
I thought you asked whether or not we discussed her status as a
Then let
witness
me back
there.
up, because it was a bad question if you didn't understand it.
Okay.
Those are the rules, right? Okay. So you discussed with your prosecution team whether or not the state would seek the death penalty against
Yes.
whoever the state accused of committing that crime?
Yes.
All right. And
I should back up. I mean, I don't know that we had a discussion before they actually had an arrest. I mean, that was 2 days later, but certainly in between the time that we filed and then we did have a discussion.
Okay, so what you're saying, if I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but just so the record is clear, is that after Mr. Robinson was arrested, your team had a conversation about whether or not it would file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty.
It was rather informal. I don't know that we all got together and said, what are we going to do? I would talk to different members of my team. But I had pretty much made up my decision. And so they knew where I was going.
Did you make up your decision before there was an arrest?
I thought that based on if we had the evidence that, yeah, we would be seeking the death penalty.
And you were already aware at that time that the child of one of your team members was present at that event, right?
Sure.
All right. Now, what you're saying is that and that you discussed that with all of the team members, even if informally?
As far as the death penalty?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't exclude from that
No.
conversation the prosecutor whose child we're talking
No.
about? That prosecutor was included in the conversation
Yes.
about whether to seek the death penalty?
Yes.
All right. And you're aware, because I think you were present, that there were a number of press conferences held by elected state officials both before and after Mr. Robinson's arrest, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The governor, who's a former licensed attorney in Utah, held a press conference on September 10th. Were you present there?
Probably. I was president at two different press conferences.
So there was one on the 10th and one on the 11th?
I know he...
We have an arrest and an update in a Concord shooting death. We want to talk a little bit about, it's an armed robbery, first-degree murder investigation that's happening right now with the Concord Police Department. And our Jesse Pierre is actually going to give us more information on this tonight at 5 and 6. But they just sent in that they arrested 19-year-old Brandon Cortez Morris, Jr. of Concord in connection with the shooting on Farrington Drive that happened on February 1st. He's charged with a first-degree murder charge, one